All right, we are live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to meeting 5 of the proposed project presentations for TSPLOST 2023, Athens-Clarke County. Pull up the agenda. So this is our old agenda tonight. We have 8 presentations, which we will get to momentarily. As usual, presenters will have 10 minutes to give their presentation. Keith will help with the time, then we'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A, 5 minutes discussion. But first, we need to approve our minutes from last Thursday's meeting. So you all got a copy of this with your agenda.
Yes.
Are there any corrections to the minutes?
They look good to me as I read them, and I'll make a motion that we approve and accept these minutes as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, first and a second. And who seconded it?
Mallory.
Gotcha. First from Frank, second from Mallory. All those in favor of the minutes from last Thursday, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, easy part's done. The minutes are approved. So I will stop sharing my screen.
Mallory seconded, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right, before we dive into our presentations tonight, I had asked Keith about the questions that we are submitting to presenters, and we're going to send those out sometime this week, and hopefully we'll start getting back some answers. Is that right, Keith?
That is correct.
All right. We are in for quite a journey tonight. We're going all over the county with tonight's presentations. We'll start off with some from the airport, and then Firefly Trail is here. We'll head over to Jefferson Road and hear about some corridor improvements. Then we'll be along Timothy Road, and Atlanta Highway. Then we'll steer into 5 Points and end around Barber Street. So fun night tonight, presentations. And I welcome you all. Our first tonight is project number 12, Airport Perimeter Multi-Use Biking and Walking Trail. And Mike, you're here?
I am.
All right. So are you
we-
driving your presentation, or do you need us to handle it for you?
I've got Keith on it.
I'm gonna do that for before I start. Let me double check on roll. Is Daryl on? I don't see him.
He's not here yet.
And what about Katie?
Katie Goodrum is here.
Oh, sorry. My bad, Katie. Yep.
Yep.
Too close to my face to see. All right, Mike, let me get your presentation going here.
All righty.
Keith, did you check me off?
I did. I got you.
Glad to be back.
I got everybody else. I just was going through my list. Those are the ones I didn't see. So
Yeah, we missed you, Madeline.
My husband was turning 75, and he took me into the wilderness for the week with no grid whatsoever. So I can't be tardy again, and I won't be. I've missed you too.
All right. Welcome back. That sounds like a ton of fun.
It was.
all right, Mike, when you get to 9 minutes, I'll give you a shout that you got 1 minute left. But
Okay. All
you're
right.
queued up for your 10 minutes.
All right. Well, thank you all and good evening. This project is for an airport perimeter multi-use bike and walking trail around the airport. There's a picture of our control tower from the air side. Next.
No, no.
All right, next. Thank you. So the purpose of the project is for the trail and around the outside of the airport perimeter fence. The project will bring the community to the airport and recreation and provide an added resource to complement the developing landscape around the airport. We have a perimeter fence project that's slated on our capital airport plan for FY23 and 24. That's design and construction. So it's just a perfect time to do something like this if we wanted to, and to bring out the community. This would, and I'll show a map in just a little bit of the perimeter of the airport. But this would be definitely a great addition to the fence line. So the trail would be about 8 to 10 feet in width, be maintained as a natural ground, very simple design with timber borders on the outer edge of the trail. The trail has a potential to tie into Satterfield Park, Lexington Road, Firefly Trail, and then any other future development around the airport as well. The project classification is social well-being. Next, Keith. So the project cost have design fees at 97. I'm not going to go through all of them, but then we have miscellaneous fees, which is permitting and all the other things that go along with that. The construction, 810,000. And even though the perimeter fence, which is going to be an FAA project, it's usually 90% federal, 5% state, 5% local on that particular project. There'll still be some work to be done on the outside of this fence line. They don't dress it up very well. There's a lot of ruts, and we want to make it as easy to walk and ride a bike as possible, nice and smooth and that kind of thing. So a lot of this would be bringing in dirt and smoothing it out, and then of course the timbers, and making it a very nice looking trail for bikes and walking. And then the contingencies and the management and all of that. Public art would be involved in this, and then the program management. So it brings the total to 1.189 for the project. Next. So the annual cost for this project, the FAA expects us as airport to maintain the fence line anyway, inside and out. Once a fence, and we do have fence right now, but it's really old, and so that's the purpose of this fencing project. So they do require us to maintain the integrity of both the inside and outside of the fence. So the airport currently has a fencing project, like I say, in the CIP. And the fence line will be much more manageable with the fence in. Will be the cost of really maintaining this project because of this will be the burden on the airport because we're going to have to do it anyway. And it won't be a burden on the taxpayers of Athens-Clarke County or Athens-Clarke County General Fund. So we'll take care of all of it. Next. So the map that I'll show you here is of the airport, the aerial view of the airport. The green section is where we already have fence. The bigger part of the green is where we had a runway extension, several years ago. And so we were able to put in proper fencing there. Now the red is where the new fence line would go with our FAA project, and that we would also want to make the outside perimeter. So the whole entire green and red would be the entire walking trail and bike ride for this project. You could see on the south side, Lexington Road, that touches Lexington in that area right there. Not too far where the Lowe's is, we've got Satterfield Park, and we could easily tie into Satterfield Park without any problem. And then all the way to the left, we have the Firefly Trail, which is a little bit distance from our edge right there, but I've been told we can, not easily, but we can tie into the Firefly Trail as well. And it wouldn't be a part of this project, but this project is mostly just the perimeter of the fence line. All right, next. So the benefits of the project, of course, is the airport perimeter multi-use trail to connect the airport with the community. We've got so many people that come through the airport that bring their kids, or they just want to experience the airport, young and old, and they don't know how to do it. We see a lot of people walking through our parking lots, just hanging out at the outside of the fence. But see that we're kind of far enough removed here where I am, where all of the buildings are, that they can't get a real good view. Well, here, if you went around the airport where this, where the perimeter fence would be, they'd have a real good view on many sides of this airport. A lot of them want to stop and have picnics, which we allow, you know, on the grassy areas on this side of the airport, but there's not a whole lot of opportunity around the other side of the airport where you can get another perspective as well. Now, we do go around there because we have to inspect all of our fence line. But right now it's just not available. It's a lot of brush. It's not, there's no really access to it. So this would provide that access to them. It'll also bring people to the airport for recreation and then general aviation activities and interest for future projects. And I say future projects because the next two slides, and I want to make note of this, are not a part of this project, these next two slides, but it's something that I really strongly feel that I would love to see at this airport. And it's a play park. A lot of airports have these parks. Peachtree DeKalb Airport has a park. This particular one is in Greenville, South Carolina, at the downtown airport. If you ever go to Greenville, stop by that downtown airport. I have grandkids there, and I take them to this park all the time. And it's something that I've talked to our airport authority about, and we visited this park, and it's something we'd love to do. But again, it's not a part of this project, but there's a lot of opportunity to bring something like this to the airport through this walking trail. Next slide. And the next slide is just another picture of the park. This is not their runway. This is actually a sidewalk, but it's in the direction of their runway, runway 10. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. And next slide. And so the areas for this park, again, you got Satterfield. That's not too far away. We could put this on airport property. We'd maintain it. A lot of airports, what they do, they get donations, and that would be our intent, not to put a burden on leisure services or anything like that. But that's future. Again, that's not a part of this project. But this is something that I think would kind of help us go in that direction one day. Next slide. Any questions?
Thank you, Mike. Any questions from the committee? Please raise your hand. Andrea.
I have a couple questions. One is about, I guess, the distance that would be all the way around. Do you have like the total distance that the trail would be?
Yes, it's roughly about 24 to 27,000 linear feet.
Okay. And then is there in the budget materials, and I'm sorry, I haven't reviewed all that before tonight, does it distinguish between the cost for, I guess, what would essentially be like double track adjacent to the fence and the cost of the fence itself?
Say again now?
Does the budget differentiate in the construction cost between the cost of the fencing materials and the cost of construction of the double track?
No, this is just the track itself. The fencing materials would be taken care of in our fencing project with the FAA. So it has, this cost that I showed you has nothing to do with fencing whatsoever. Yeah, it's just the track itself.
Jeff?
Yeah, I have two questions. One, does the FAA really let you paint a sidewalk next to an active runway that looks like a runway? But I'm curious about how many flights a day do we have on a non-game weekend average day? How many flights do we have a day?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because it's a whole lot crazier on game day. We do roughly about 165 to 200 a day operations. We range anywhere from I would say 3,500 to 5,000 in a month operations, and that's takeoff and landings. And that's just also identified by our tower, which is only open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. after 8 p.m., we still have a lot of activity, takeoff and landings by surrounding airports that are learning how to fly, at nighttime. I was here last night, and we just continuously had airplanes taking off and landing. So that doesn't even include them. So yeah, we do much more than that.
Okay, is that a lot of touch and goes, or is it all?
Oh no. Some touch and goes. I would say on an average, probably 20%. We get a lot of corporate. We get a lot of course, charter as well, because all UGA is flying too. I mean, the basketball, the volleyball, everybody's flying. But UGA isn't. A lot of people think that the airport is just all UGA business. That's totally false. So we get a lot of UGA business, no doubt, but we get a lot of corporate, a lot of general aviation that come in. There's a lot of business that goes on in Athens-Clarke County, even surrounding counties. And we get a lot of aircraft from different manufacturers because we have 6,000-foot runway. And some of these companies have aircraft that can't land on anything less. And so a lot of the surrounding counties don't have the airports that support those type aircraft, but we do. So we get a lot of corporate that come in, not just for us in this county, but surrounding counties as well.
That's a lot busier than I would have guessed, and I'm sort of under part of the flight path here. So thank you. That's
We try to
interesting.
be good neighbors.
We have Rocky, then Alan, then John.
Hi, I'm Rocky. This question probably pertains more to the next project, but if you were to go through with this project, if it were to be awarded, how would it help to attract commercial service to Athens?
This particular project, I don't know if it would have any significant impact on commercial. I am working on commercial. Been talking to several airlines, but it would definitely benefit the community. But as far as the commercial, I don't know if it would really benefit that.
Alan?
Thank you. I'm a big fan of a lot of other towns that have the ability to ride around their airports. And I've done that many times, and I enjoy watching the planes take off and such. But in looking at this plan, it looks like the trail would be fairly close to the runway. So I don't know the answer to this. That's why I'm asking. Does that mean that there's going to be a lot more issues with noise as well as jet fumes?
Not necessarily, and I say that because my office is pretty much off the runway, and there isn't a whole lot of jet fumes around. These engines nowadays are pretty clean, and they don't. If you're talking about the old days with the old what is it, the DC-10s, the DC-8s maybe, or even the old Lears, those engines, yeah, you'd probably smell some fumes. But nowadays it's pretty clean. And you don't smell a whole lot of fumes. I could go out of the terminal here, and I mean the jets are right there, and you all could too. I mean, if you come to the airport, you could experience it as well. That these jets, when they leave, you might get some wind from their engines, but you wouldn't be breathing a whole lot of fumes. So it's really clean. It's a whole lot cleaner than it used to be.
I remember the old days, but thank you.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, we have John, and then I'll put myself on stack. Oh, John, not sorry. Still can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So yes. So somehow I've lost something. But the surface of this trail would be what, Mike?
It'd be a natural. It'd be grass. We'd maintain it. It'd be low, low cut grass, but it would be.
Oh, so it's not cinders or anything. It's just the grass.
Just grass. Yeah, it'd be a very simple design. Yeah, very simple.
Okay. All right. And do you have any data from was it Greenville or any other airports that have similar trails that that show usage? I just I wonder how many people who are actually using the airport as an airport are going to get out and walk around it. And I also wonder how connected it is to the rest of the community, and how much,
Yeah,
how much
that
access to other people there is.
I do know. I know the airport manager at PDK, and they use their trail. They have a little trail there, not a big one, but they do use it. And then Greenville, there's people there all the time walking that little circle there, which is just in that park area. Also, if you're familiar with St. Simon's, if anybody's gone to St. Simon's and you've seen that airport, they actually got a sidewalk there that they use, and there's a lot of people that use that as well. I've talked to that airport manager.
Okay, thank you.
And then one other thing I will add is that here, when I drive in or drive out, I see a lot of people parking in our parking lots and walking around, the perimeter of the parking lot. So it's definitely, they do like coming here.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Mike, so just to confirm, this trail would be along the outside of the fence. Is that right?
It would. That's correct. And it's all the fence line is outside of the restricted areas for the airport that the FAA consider restricted areas, the runway obstruction free areas, all the safety areas. So it's a safe, it's a safe area to be at, to be walking and that kind of.
Okay. And then Andrea had a question in chat and Teresa was following up. So Andrea, where did you see, do you remember what projects were $5 a linear foot for natural surface?
So I don't think it was any of these, the current TSPLOST projects. I think that what I was looking at to get that number was some prior SPLOST projects that for the natural surface trail, like for instance, through Beach Haven, I think if you calculated out the amount that was, it was around $5 a linear foot for natural surface trail. I was just wondering what would the is there like a construction challenge that's anticipated here? I mean, something unique to this project?
Well, some of our property is challenging. It is. It's not all the best. The fence line, hopefully, will help us to get it up to grade to where we need to be. Yeah, so that was the big part of it. We have so much area around this airport that's just not flat. There's a lot of ups and downs and all kinds of challenges. So it did increase the cost a little bit more.
I want to point out Alan's question in the chat, which I share as well. So if this is just a low cut grass natural surface trail, is that really bikeable? It's just, I've never biked on a grass trail, I have to admit.
It's more of a mountain bike trail, I guess it would be, than a street bike that I would think I would use. Of course, somebody who rides, which I do ride bikes, but I have done mountain bikes, but this I probably would ride with a mountain bike. Now we're going to try to make it as smooth as possible. I mean, that's the reason for a lot of, the cost to make it as manageable as possible. Yeah, that would be my understanding.
Yeah, if it's more of a mountain bike trail, then hopefully wouldn't have to smooth it out too much. The mountain bikes can handle a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Flat isn't really appealing for mountain bikers.
Say that again, Andrew. Oh no, we lost her. I can't hear you, Andrea. Sorry. You muted.
I think she said she's glad. Oh.
Yeah, I was trying to say that I do not think flat and smooth is going to be very appealing for any of the mountain bikers.
Yeah, you want some action. Oh, there'll be some action because, well, like I say, this airport has so much terrain and it's all different. There's a lot of different types. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what we can do with it.
All right. So Mike, one of the questions that we've been asking our presenters is how each of the projects help close the equity gap. So can you tell us about how this project will do that?
Well, and explain that a little bit more, equity gaps. Did you define that?
Yes, it's one of the questions that we submitted to presenters to consider in the course of your presentation. So what it is in what specific ways will this project close the equity gap in Athens-Clarke County by improving the equitability of capital improvements throughout the entire community?
Okay. Well, the only thing I can say about this project is that it would bring people to the airport. I think we're lacking a lot about people. A lot of people don't realize there is an airport here, and I mean, honestly, I've had a lot of teachers call me up and they said, "Do we have an airport here?" I said, "Yes," and they said, "Well, can I bring some kids there?" And I said, "Absolutely." You know, the kids they're learning aviation. They're learning about you know, how airplanes fly. So we're starting to see more and more kids. We've got a program that we're trying to produce now with Athens-Clarke County, is to bring the kids here, you know, and learn a little bit more. But I think by having this trail, this will bring bring the airport in a lot of focus to people and let them know that, hey, there is an airport here, and it's just not for certain people. You know, it's for everybody, the whole community to enjoy. So I'm hoping that would change things a little bit.
And Mike, Katrina did have a question about this connecting to transit. Katrina, would you like to ask that? Hi.
Yeah, yes, it was sort of a continuation of what this. I'm not quite sure how this all connects, you know, just to what exists already. Like, how close is it to Athens Transit? Is it connecting to like other sidewalks, or is it just like a sort of a leisure, or is it really a functional trail?
Well, this initially, the idea was just a trail, but then it came to my attention that, hey, we need to tap into other trails, you know, to really make it viable. And so that's when we started looking at, okay, Satterfield's right there. We can tap into Satterfield Park real easy. And then also the Lexington Road off of the south side, you could tap into that walkway. And then the Firefly, which is a little distance. It wouldn't be easy to get to, but we would be able to get to it. It's my understanding as well. So that would be eventually tap into that. So yeah, it would be easy to get to Satterfield and then Lexington, but Firefly might be a little stretch.
All right, Mike. Well, thank you for that one. And you are presenting the next presentation too, number 13?
I am.
Okay, so this is project number 13, the airport hangar project.
This is the airport hangar project. And this is a picture of our most busiest part of the airport, the terminal areas, the commercial terminal and the general aviation terminal. All right, next. So first I wanted to kind of explain what a hangar is, and especially I'll get into T hangar and box hangars, but this is a row of hangars, and this is really what we're looking for, something like this, just one row, basically. All right, next. And this next picture is from the ground what a hangar, row of hangars looks like. This particular one is 5 hangars. And you have 5 on one side and 5 on the other. So it's actually 10 hangars in this one row. Next. So when we talk about T hangars, this is what a T hangar looks like. They're in the shape of a T. Of course, the airplane, the wings go in the larger section, and then the tail section goes in the smaller section. And this is what they call a nested hangar, a nested T hangar. Next. And this is what it looks like with the aircraft in it. All right, next. And this one is called box hangars. So in the row of hangars, you could have either the T hangar or you could have these boxed hangars. Either one works well. And the type of aircraft that we want to put in it, it wouldn't be any problem. Next. So this is a typical T hangar here. This is a single engine aircraft, the type that would fit into a hangar. we're looking either to do a T hangar or a box hangar. If it was a T hangar, this particular hangar here is about 45 feet in width, and it goes deep by about 43. Next. This is a larger single engine aircraft, holds about 6 people plus 2 pilots. And this is another example of a T hangar. You see this type door here is a bifold door, which is very popular on hangars themselves. They just kind of get out of the way instead of the ones that slide from right to left. Either one's good, but this particular one is a good design. Next. The largest type aircraft that we have are what we call the light twins, and this is a light twin that'll fit in a T hangar or a box hangar. And these will hold about 10 people, sometimes 8 to 10. All right, next. This is another aerial view of the airport, and to the right, to the upper right, you'll see the area of concentration of the airport. That's kind of what I call the nucleus of the airport. That's where all our business is, the hangars, the commercial terminal, the general aviation terminal, parking, and all that. So I'm going to focus a little bit on that area. If you go to the next slide. This gives you an idea how we're laid out with our hangars. So you see the rows; those are box or T hangars. They've got different designs. They were built in different years, and we have room for several more hangars to be built as well. Okay. So with that, let me talk about the purpose of the project. So the purpose of the project is to bring in additional revenue to Athens-Clarke County General Fund and also the airport. So the project will allow the airport to construct individual hangars that will be used by based aircraft owners to rent from the airport for their aircraft. Now, the project will add revenue to the airport through fuel sales, estimated about $75,000 annually, depending on the type of aircraft that will go in it. The project will also add revenue to the Athens-Clarke County General Fund from local property tax. And again, depending on what kind of aircraft goes in it, it estimates anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 annually that go into the general fund. A lot of people think that, well, most all revenue does come back to the airport, our hangar rental, our fuel sales, because we're an enterprise fund. But one thing that the FAA doesn't mandate is that the property tax go back to the airport. The property tax at all airports, I believe, go to the county or the city, and that of course helps the general fund. Don't hold me to this, but I think, and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000. I don't think it's over that yet, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 is the total, I think, property tax that goes into the general fund from the airport annually. And I may be a little off, up or down. Project classification is economic prosperity. Next. The hangar project will provide infrastructure needed for positive economic growth of the airport and for the Athens-Clarke County. It'll bring added revenue to the airport, again, and will enhance the general fund. Currently, Ben Epps Airport has 77 hangars, T hangars, box hangars, that are all occupied. And we have absolutely no hangars to rent right now. We do have a waiting list right now of 15 aircraft, and that's growing weekly. I would say we probably get one call a week, and they come from all over, not just Athens-Clarke County, but there are other surrounding counties. Believe it or not, Atlanta will call us up because a lot of folks that they'll buy aircraft first, and then they'll start looking for a hangar and realize there's no hangars to be had. Not only us, but other airports too are having are all filled up, and they have waiting lists as well. So they're trying to build. A lot of airports are starting to build hangars right now. The estimated annual revenue from hangar rental is about 66,000 annually. Next. The project cost for design and construction is noted. The construction is about $828. There's contingency management and of course public arts in this as well. The TSPLOST total 1.2 million for this project. Next. The annual cost of the airport would be routine maintenance, which we already conduct right now on our existing hangars, which have age to them. But this one being brand new, hopefully there won't be too much maintenance to be done up front, but it's mostly light bulbs and maintaining the doors. The doors seem to be the biggest maintenance item, and it's mostly just preventative maintenance that you're doing. Sometimes there'll be some repairs on this or that, or bearings or whatnot, but it's all done in-house. We do have a maintenance person that handles that. The hangar tenant would be responsible for the cost of the power to their own hangar. A lot of hangars that we have now, we only have 1 meter, and then some of them, they have individual meters. This particular one, I would put in individual meters so that the airport wouldn't be responsible for power. We would be responsible for water. Usually that's just an airport thing. You might have water spigot on each end of the hangar. They rarely use it, but it's there if they want it. And then really no other costs are anticipated. Next. And that's it. Any questions?
Questions for Mike on the airport hangar project? Right, hands just went up. And I did not see the order because my screen was scrolled down. So I'll start with the top. Alan, did you raise your hand? Oh, Alan, are you talking? We can't hear you. Sorry.
Rookie move. It looks like the cost would be recouped in about 20 years if I did my math correct. And my question would be, about how long does one of these hangars, what's their lifespan?
That's a good question. If you take care of them and maintain them properly, they'll last a long time, because if they do need paint, we'll paint them. The roof is the first thing that really goes, and I would say that's probably good for probably 20 years. And then what we do, we either replace the grommets on them because it's all metal, or we replace the roof itself. But most of the time it's the grommets. As long as you maintain them and paint them, they won't rust on you.
Jeff?
Yeah, I was wondering, what's the average rental cost? And I guess really the payback period, maybe that answers my question, but do you have outdoor tie downs as well?
We do. We have outdoor tie downs. We probably have, I would say, 40 spaces for outside tie downs. Of course, a lot of people don't want to leave their airplanes outside nowadays because the avionics are so expensive in them, and then the temperature of the sun or the cold, in the wintertime really damages the avionics in them. So they're really trying to protect those, and of course the paint. That's a pricey item as well. But we range anywhere from $255 a month all the way up to $600 on some of our bigger box hangars. This particular one would be roughly about $550 a month, and of course, they would have to pay for their electric. But that seems to be the going rate. I've called a lot of airports to see what their new hangars were going for in these sizes that we want to build, and that's about what they'll run.
Well, it sounds like they're lined up to get in there, so thanks.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, hey, Mike, you mentioned earlier in the presentation an estimate of, I think, 75,000 a year in additional fuel revenues. Is that gross or is that net? That
would be gross. Yeah,
and
gross.
how do you figure, what's your basis for estimating that you would gross another 75,000 a year in fuel?
What I took was the type of aircraft that are on our list and how often they fly. These type aircraft are not the small ones. If it was like a J3 Cub, it'd be much lower.
Right.
But
20 bucks a
these,
month.
yeah, at least. Yeah, but these are some good sized aircraft, and
Yeah.
some of them are Cirruses, which are very, very popular right now. Everybody seems to be buying Cirruses, and they are kind of a high end single engine aircraft, but they take a lot of fuel, and these pilots fly an awful lot.
And can you give us any guesstimate on, as opposed to gross of 75,000, or what the profit would be?
We do about we make about 25% on nav gas sales.
Okay.
Is what we do. We make most of our money on jet. Now, some of these aircraft are jet as well. They're turbines.
Right.
And so I did incorporate or include the jet sales. Now we make some pretty good profit on the jet, and a lot of that profit will come from them.
18 to 20K a year more in fuel profits. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Teresa and then Patrina.
Hi, this is just a quick question for you, Mike. In your new building, how many aircraft will it accommodate?
It'll hold 10. I'm looking for 10 T hangar or box hangar spaces, so it'll accommodate 10.
Super, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa, for getting that clarity for us. Patrina?
All right. Yeah, bringing in revenue sounds worthwhile, but you also hear a lot about sort of environmental impacts from airplanes. Is there anything in the the design or construction that's going to sort of speak to the environment? Say, for example, the hangars will be retrofitted with solar panels. Like, what's the environmental impact here?
Well, right now I haven't included anything as far as environmental except LED lights inside. That would be about the only thing I think that would be beneficial for the environment with the LED lights.
Additional questions for Mike on the hangars? All right, Mike. Are you coming back to present any more projects for the airport?
No, ma'am. I think I'm done with that.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And,
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. So up next on our list is project number 83, Firefly Trail, subproject number 3, completion and trailheads. And I see that we have both Mark Ralston and John Cassane here tonight. Welcome. How are y'all doing?
Doing great. Thank you, Lauren. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. So who's going to present tonight?
So I think I'll be the lead presenter, and then John will be here to help with questions.
Great, great. Are you driving, or do you need us to drive?
If you could drive, I'd be more secure with that. I've never driven off this computer with my remote connection. So.
Sure.
All right,
Keith,
Mark.
you have the presentation?
I got it. Just when you need to say next, that's all you got to do.
Yep, will do. So as you all know, obviously I'm Mark Ralston, I'm president of the Firefly Trail Incorporated, and we're really honored to be here on behalf of the organization. So next, please. So our mission is to be I'm about to do my work mission. It is to foster the development of the Firefly Trail on or near the historic corridor of the Georgia Railroad Athens branch. When it's done, the Firefly Trail will reach 39 miles from Athens to Union Point. And our vision is that will be a starting point for a region-wide network of trails throughout our entire area. Today we have trail segments that have been completed in Athens, Winterville, Maxey's, and Union Point. So next, please. So tonight I'd like to take you on a virtual tour of the Firefly Trail in Athens-Clarke County. And on this slide, we see the grand opening of the first segment of the trail from Old Winterville Road to the East Broad Street Trailhead. This is the East Broad Street Trailhead. And I really want to emphasize that the trail has repeatedly won approval from voters and the mayor and commission because it's a game changer for health, recreation, tourism, and economic opportunity. So next. Not quite a year ago, Winterville's 1.2 mile section was completed and opened, and this segment was funded through TSPLOST 2018. Now, combined with the first segment that we were just looking at and the segment that's going to open in 2 weeks, we have nearly 4 miles of trail here in Athens-Clarke County. The remaining 3.4 mile section is the subject of this proposal. Next. Both of the first 2 segments have already received heavy use by the people of all ages who are looking for opportunities for safe recreation and active transportation. And we've also organized a local action committee in East Athens to try to help the neighborhood there better integrate the trail into the neighborhood and feel welcome using it. So we're looking forward to that developing over time. Next, please. This is the Winterville segment, and it has become wildly popular with people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities. It draws mainly from locals, but also from out-of-town folks. And like some of the others we've discussed, was funded primarily by TSPLOST 2018. So next. Coming up on October 11, just 11 days from now, Athens-Clarke County will open the trail's newest segment, which is the 1.8 mile piece between Old Winterville Road and Hancock Road. This part of it's pictured here. This newly and eagerly awaited opening will let trail users go all the way from Dudley Park, almost 3 miles toward Winterville. This was also funded by TSPLOST 2018, and it passes near the Rock Hill Quarry site, which will eventually be the location of a new county park. Next, please. Also funded by TSPLOST 2018 is this bridge over Trail Creek, which is slated to open next fall. And a lengthy community outreach project gathered a lot of public input on the design concepts. And as you can see, it will combine arch steel metal sections with the wooden central section that harkens back to the historic wooden trestle that was originally built in the 1880s. Next. The trail has a lot of benefits, and one of those benefits is economic. An economic impact estimate from the Georgia Tech study that was completed in 2016 for the Georgia Department of Transportation showed that when all 39 miles are finished, the trail will attract about 1.13 million users a year and have a regional economic impact of about 14.7 million annually. Just construction alone will generate 158 jobs across our region, the study estimates. So next. Of course, in order for the full scope of the trail's benefits to be realized, the trail has to be completed. So illustrated in this map is this by the solid orange line is the trail segment that will open on October 1. Next, please. And this map shows the yet to be completed subproject 3, which is what we're here tonight about, which extends some 3.4 miles from the intersection of Hancock Road and Spring Valley Road all the way to Winterville's 5 Points. Now, although this was included in the TSPLOST funds from 2018, this final trail segment just faces a funding shortfall. The amount included in the previous TSPLOST just isn't enough to finish the trail, particularly not in the long-lasting concrete surface that voters really expect, much less to develop facilities such as parking or restrooms, which are very important to the trail users. Now, contributing to the gap we have here are higher than expected costs on the Trail Creek Bridge, and also a bridge that had to be installed over a future access ramp from Lexington Road to Outer Loop 10. So next, please. Now, county leaders have committed to completing the trail. The question before the advisory committee is when. If funds aren't allocated from this TSPLOST, it will really be several years before the next TSPLOST or SPLOST might close the gap. And during that time, the residents of our county just won't receive the trail's full health, safety, and recreational benefits. So next, please. Now, this is a great view that shows part of the newest trail segment, which is approaching Hancock Road along Spring Valley Road. It's near the Hallmark Mobile Home Park. Especially for nearby neighborhoods, the Firefly Trail promises to promote equity in health, safety, and infrastructure investment. But fulfilling that promise requires having full connectivity between Athens and Winterville. We think it's best to finish the trail now and realize its full potential sooner rather than later. So next. So as I touched on a moment ago, besides completing the trail, the proposal includes some necessary amenities. One of those will be this trailhead facility located adjacent to Rannoch Road, as shown in the concept graphic here. And next. And also here, which is at the intersection of Winterville Road and Spring Valley Roads, where the trail will connect to the future Rock Hill Quarry Park. And that's Winterville Road on your left, and then making a right angle turn and going off to the right towards the airport. So next, please. Now the trailheads will include parking areas such as this example on the North Oconee River Greenway. And next. As well as restroom facilities. This is a new structure at Ben Burton Park. Next, please. We're also proposing to include a small skate skills area at each of the trailheads, similar to this example, which is at a Vogel Creek Park in Texas. These kinds of areas will help diversify the Firefly Trail's user base. Next. So voters in the fast sales tax initiatives have really made it clear that they expect the final segment to be completed with the same high quality, cost-effective concrete surface that you see here. And this has a life expectancy of about 50 years, which really makes it an ideal surface for trails like this. Now, our community is just making a huge investment in the Firefly Trail, and this public resource will return that investment many times over if we can just maximize the number of people who are able to use it. So next slide, please. Now, without the TSPLOST funding, Athens-Clarke County might have to use crushed stone or compacted soils for many years, really, in portions of this final section. And while these surfaces are really inexpensive initially, they do require some ongoing maintenance, and that can be expensive over time. Otherwise, they wind up looking like this, and they're useful only to the most hardy and adventurous of trail users. So next. So in contrast, the vision of Firefly Trail incorporated the Athens-Clarke County government and the voters is that the trail will be accessible to everyone, regardless of age or ability. And that means we need to finish it in concrete. Next.
1 minute, Mark.
1 minute?
Yep.
Thank you. So the project will address numerous selection criteria which are included in the proposal, but I really wanted to stress promoting health and safety and equitability, that's a tough word, of capital improvements throughout the community. Next, please. The next slide is about our costs, well, project benefits, excuse me. Yep.
Oop.
And you can read all those in the proposal. But that slide speaks for itself. Next slide after this one, please, if you would. We got them a little out of order here. So this is a hard slide to read, but it does go into details that the county staff prepared for us about costs, and I'm certainly happy to go back into this slide during the question and answer section. And so now if you'll flip back to the thank you slide, I do want to thank you very much for all the time and attention. Also want to note that the trail cost estimates are based on worst case scenarios. If there are funds left over from TSPLOST 2018, those can and will be applied to the subproject 3. So we may not need the full 10.4 million, but there's really no way to tell until the county finishes the pieces that are already in progress. So thank you again, and John and I are happy to entertain any questions.
All right, questions for Mark and John on Firefly Trail subproject number 3 completion and trailheads. Jeff.
Hey, you may have mentioned it in the slide and I missed it, but what's the cost per linear foot or per meter for a concrete greenway?
That's a great question. Derek, do you have an answer for that one?
Well, Derek's not here tonight, but I can tell you, you know, 6 months ago, the price was a lot less.
Yeah, I know that.
You know,
What was it 6 months ago? Maybe in 6 months, it'll be down to that again.
it was roughly, for construction, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million per mile.
Okay.
You know, plus you still have land and design and all the other costs that go with it.
So that doesn't include right-of-way acquisition or anything like that. That's just making it flat and slapping the aggregate on top.
Right. Of course, all that varies, you know, depending on the.
Sure.
It's got bridges or.
I'm just thinking of a ballpark here. So that answers my question. Thank you.
And I'm looking at the project cost estimates, and I see that the county has estimated that they will fully acquire all the right-of-ways and land necessary through the TSPLOST 2018.
Right.
Teresa?
Yes, thank you for this presentation. I am trying to figure out how long, how many linear feet this segment of the trail is. Are you able to provide that information?
I would just have to do the math to multiply 3.4 by 5,280.
Well, let's see. I have a calculator here.
It's about 3.4 miles, right?
3/4 of a mile? Okay.
No,
3.4 miles.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Yeah, 3.4.
3.4
Yeah.
of a mile.
I come up with 17,952 linear feet.
Okay. 17,000. Okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
Additional questions for Mark and John? I have a question. Are there going to be in this proposal bathrooms at both of the parking areas or just one of them? I see one.
Yeah, John, do you know that one? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, John. There you go.
Restrooms at both is what I've talked about with the leisure services staff at this point.
Thank you.
These, I think I should point out that both of the pieces of land where the trailheads and facilities are planned are owned by an Athens-Clarke County. The Rannick Road, there were 3 parcels that the county acquired maybe a year and a half ago or something, 2 years ago, and then that triangle wedge piece there by where Spring Valley and Winterville Road and Athens Road meet.
I think I just saw a message from Alex in the chat saying that the county is suggesting only 1 restroom facility, not 2.
Okay. That's
Gotcha.
clarified.
Thanks, Alex, for the clarity. So the trail, sorry, who was talking?
Oh, go ahead.
The trail at this point, the rest of the trail, is it going to be 12 feet wide or 10?
No, I am not sure of that.
Yeah. 10 feet out in that area is what is what we've currently.
feet.
envisioning.
And I'm trying to remember, is 10 feet the width of the North Oconee Greenway to the Nature Center? Is that about what that is?
I believe that's right. Yep.
Okay, just to give folks an idea of what we're talking about here. And then it's, is it 12 or 14 feet when we get into town?
Overall project request.
I believe it is 14, but 2 of those feet are porous concrete.
Okay.
So 12 feet of traditional concrete and 2 of porous.
And the porous is for drainage.
Yes, my recollection, of course, this was a long time ago now, is that the county deemed that they needed, because of it was being such a intense urban area, it needed some additional drainage capacity. And so they used the porous in that so that they wouldn't have to build a lot of stormwater retention features.
Gotcha.
Yeah, stormwater is stored under the trail or goes under the trail and then infiltrates in through that porous concrete.
Yeah, so there's a lot of engineering that goes into getting these trails done. So if folks are wondering about the cost, there's so much more than just the concrete on the trail itself. Questions from the committee?
Fingers in the garage.
Any discussion?
Unless you have something that you know about.
Yeah, I thought I'd try to address Teresa's question about the price. I believe the trail cost is closer to less than $300 a linear foot, maybe with the overall project with parking and restroom and the whole cost. But just for the trail sections, it's about half of that.
I have a question, and I think that you got into this a little bit, Mark, but can you explain more? And we asked this of the last presenter too, about how this particular project helps close the equity gap in Athens-Clarke County.
Oh, absolutely. As you know, the portion of town that this trail passes through has traditionally and historically been underserved with very minimal investment in public facilities. So this really represents, we used the term game changer before, about bringing some really essential health and recreation and even active transportation facilities out to people who currently really have. If you look at the area, there are no sidewalks. It's very difficult for people to safely get out and get any kind of exercise. We know in historically Black communities that blood pressure is higher, diabetes is higher, mental health problems are exacerbated. And these are all things that facilities like the Firefly Trail can help communities improve with. So definitely that social equity is a big piece of what the trail brings.
Thank you, Mark. Any further discussion?
Good.
So I see one from John about how does the rest of the gap get filled? That's what this project does. It completes that 3.4 mile section in concrete so that there is a continuous, unbroken concrete path from Athens to Winterville.
Yeah, so thank you. I was asking my question in response to Alex's note that this is only asking for about 1/5 of the total 3.4 miles to fill the gap. So I was a little puzzled by that. Sorry. Can
Teresa?
you see?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so I'm a little confused. The price tag here is 10,370,000, and it's only for, let's see, what did he say here? For 1/5 of the 3.4 miles? Is that right?
That is not my understanding. I mean, I think
Okay, well,
we're on, as Mark said, the worst case.
Oh.
We have a worst case scenario possibility, but we're not. There's no way for us to know exactly what will carry over, from the TSPLOST 2018 for this section. So, but it could be that where the trail section is going to open October 1st, where that ends to as far as Rannick Road could be built, and that would leave a little more than 2 miles into Winterville, but we really just can't know right now.
So you don't know what the linear foot length is? Is that what you're saying?
Not, I mean, my understanding is that what we've gotten the proposal would, at a worst case, complete the trail, this section of the trail to Winterville.
Okay, so I mean, I'm really lost here because I'm trying to understand, how many square feet, I mean, linear feet we're talking about, and I mean, $10 million is a huge price tag.
So
I'm just
this is
gonna-
Alex
Okay,
from
thank
Leisure
you.
Services.
Yeah,
I'm trying to say
I'm
it as quiet as possible, but I know I opened a can of worms there. So sorry, Mark and John. So part of this section, Firefly 3, is already being taken care of by the existing project. Mark showed that in the presentation. It's from the previous TSPLOST. But there is a shortage, which is where Mark was referring to. The previous TSPLOST will leave a gap. So this project fills that gap in concrete, and then in addition creates those parking areas, the skate features, and the restroom there at the quarry. So without this project, that would lead to those dirt trails that Mark showed in his presentation. There would be some form of you'd ride from Winterville and you'd hit a dead end, or you'd ride from Athens and you'd hit a dead end, just like you've been doing with the Murmur Trestle for the past years. So this project fills that gap. And there's not an exact linear footage for it because we are still in process of trying to figure out how much it's going to cost. As Keith Sanders mentioned, the cost of everything is kind of everywhere. So it is a good estimate that we put together in order to try and fill that gap.
Okay, so then, since that clarifies things a lot, I guess it would be really helpful if you all could separate out the cost for just the trail and then the cost for the amenities, like the parking and the restrooms and things like that. Because I mean, $10 million is a huge piece of what we have to work with here. And, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that number. So, thanks.
All right, I'm going to mute back. Sorry to mess everything up, guys.
I think that's a great idea to pull out those pieces and see what the separate numbers look like. So we're happy to work with the county to make that happen. I don't know what the time frame is to do that, but we'll find out.
Thank you, Mark. And maybe along the lines of what this is leading into is, we have a lot of projects. And so one of the things we've been asking the presenters is, what would you cut back on? So what part of this, are there any parts of this project that you would cut back on? Would it be the parking and the restrooms or something else?
Yeah, I think our first priority is to finish the trail, to get the full concrete path between Athens and Winterville. And then, if it's necessary to come back and do the parking and other amenities with a later project, that's always an option. So it'd be nice to get it all done now. I know that's great to have everything in place at one time, but we can definitely do it in stages. This priority is to get the trail on the ground.
Great. Well, we are at time. So thank you, Mark, and thank you, John, for joining us.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
All right. We all have a good night. Okay. Next on the list project number 43, Jefferson Road corridor improvements. And I believe we have Jennifer with us tonight. Jennifer, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I am locked above the garage trying to keep my 4 kids out. So if you hear banging and I run, I'll be right back. I promise.
Oh, we welcome them, future, perhaps presenters or future committee members.
That's right.
TSPLOST. Yeah, so Jennifer, do you want control or do you need us to advance your presentation slides?
There's just a map slide, so advancement isn't necessary. But if somebody could present, do it for me.
Jennifer, I'll put up the map, and if you want, whenever you're ready to, if you want us to take it down so you can see more faces, then
Okay.
we'll
Sounds
be glad to
good.
take it down. Just let me know.
All right, sounds good.
And committee members, we will take a 5-minute break after Jennifer's presentation and questions.
All right, there you go.
Perfect. All right. So first I wanted to thank you guys. I know Keith because I served on the TSPLOST committee in 2019, and I know how much time and energy this takes. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I've been there and I appreciate what you guys do. And I'm really excited to present on the other side. So this project, the overall project request is to perform a comprehensive road analysis of Jefferson Road and the implementation of those recommendations after the completion of the road analysis, possibly including road conditions, traffic patterns, safety concerns, contribution to air pollution, suitability for pedestrian and cycle use. The project will improve pedestrian, cyclists, and vehicular safety by analyzing and upgrading sidewalks and pedestrian crossings, replacing and enhancing signaling devices and signage, implementing bike lanes and other bicycling infrastructure, reconfiguring intersections and pavement markings, creating and enhancing green space and historic or cultural facilities along Jefferson Road. So this is approximately a 5-mile stretch. It is a massive arterial corridor for Athens. And so I had a couple of high-level objectives that I wanted to talk about. First and foremost being vehicle safety. Between 2015 and 2019, in a short 4-year period, this 5-mile stretch has had over 662 car crashes and 343 injuries from crashes and 7 fatalities. I had Tim Denson I had him send me a heat map of accidents. And so this stretch of road is hot red. So it indicates that there are a lot of crashes through here. We are hoping through this study that we would get suggestions for improved street lighting, signage, lane reconfiguration, plantings, beautification, and medians for traffic signals. Oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. And then, so for the second priority was pedestrian safety. And I was kind of talking to my kids today. When we see somebody attempting to cross Jefferson Road, usually you see them wait for the right moment, and even if they have the right light, they're just making a dart across. They're taking their life into their own hands. So there are many improvements that I feel are obvious here, which would include sidewalks, crosswalks, improvements to the existing crosswalks, rapid flashing beacons, traffic signals. Medians would also help their safe passage, and improve pedestrian crossings over railroads. There's a railroad track that runs parallel to almost this whole section we're discussing. And I should add that this this wasn't a 2018 project, but it is a continuation from the Prince Avenue project, which was project number 16 in 2018. So it just picks up where it left off. And then another priority, improved transit service. I really didn't have an idea of how much of a transit desert Jefferson Road was until I started looking at the maps. And it routes 7 and 5 end right there, where there's a blue bubble where it says the 10 loop. Both routes just end, and this is like a high density residential area with some budding businesses, and we really don't go beyond that with any of these routes. Now there is a little bit of a transit route that runs, and it's Route 8, and it runs on Old Jefferson from Cathwood to Jefferson River Road. But there is a Publix build that's coming. It is also labeled on here. And I think just getting people to the grocery store, there's so much potential if we could make more transit available through here. And one of my favorite parts of this request is safety for cyclists. I live on Old Jefferson, so it is a highly, like a very popular cycling and exercising route. But it runs parallel to Jefferson Road. But I would love increased safety and access for cyclists. And that's exactly what I'm hoping to get from this study. So it's more a generalized request asking for the study to be done and implementation of those findings. But that's all I have.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee for Jennifer on Jefferson Road corridor improvements? Frank, go right ahead.
Yeah, just a question or a comment. Now, Jefferson Road is a major highway.
Yes.
And does GDOT play any role in what trying to accomplish? I wish they would.
Me too. I can find out. I know. I will have to get back to you on the GDOT, but I definitely can.
All right, I didn't see whose hand went up. I have 3 hands raised, so if you do not mean to have your hand up, can you try and take it down for me? In the participants window. All right, I thought it was you, Katrina. Go right ahead.
Hey, I'm wondering about a cost breakdown, because like 7 million, it's a lot. And I agree with everything you said, though, about Jefferson. It needs a lot of work. I don't know if there's like a possible cost breakdown, like 2 million for sidewalks.
Sure, not a cost breakdown per se for like itemized lists. There is approximately 750,000 in the design fees, the research, and the just to try to configure what we need. 4.7 million is the list price for construction, and 470,000 is for the construction contingency. So in a 5-mile stretch, it does cost about $1 million for implementation of these traffic improvements. So it's just a very generalized cost for those items. But it is a very long stretch of road that we're talking about. And I think that's why it gives me sticker shock too. I agree. But for me, it's a needed patch that needs some upgrades.
And y'all, I did post a link to the project submission. This is in our folder. So if that link doesn't directly work for whatever reason, if you'll go back to the top of the chat, you'll get our folder of all the submissions. So you can take a look at that and see if you want Ashley to answer anything about the specific line items.
Well, and they are all posted online, so you don't have to give access to the SharePoint site. So
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
once y'all see them on the presentations, they're published online.
Yeah.
One last question.
Go ahead.
What is the 5-mile stretch from what point to what point?
So from the county line where Athens-Clarke County ends on Jefferson Road, all the way to the loop.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to hear. Thank you.
Great question.
So Jennifer, asking about the scope of this project. So this isn't necessarily Jefferson Road proper, but could include improvements along Old Jefferson Road.
Adjacent and intersecting. Yes,
Right,
there's a
right.
lot of clustering and the developments of Old Jefferson and the crossover roads. The railroad really does give unusual problems to our traffic jams in this area.
Tell me about it. I know. I was out there this morning.
Were you exercising or?
No, I was going to the eye doctor place out there. Every time I get on Jefferson Road, I break out in hives.
And on Old Jefferson, there's the petroleum facility, and so you got those 18-wheelers coming and going, and none of them are allowed because they're carrying petroleum to stop on the railroad. So sometimes they just stop on Old Jefferson Road and wait for the right opportunity to leave. There's some interesting traffic patterns, and Old Jefferson, the one that runs parallel, doesn't have even lines on the edge of the street. It's so thin. It really needs to be expanded. With that kind of cycling traffic, it needs its own independent bike lane for the safety of the cyclist. There's just so many improvements that it could really be a gem and an attraction for our citizens in Athens. I'd really love to see.
Thank you. I agree.
Jennifer or Keith or anyone, what studies have there been in that stretch at all? Anything that Athens in Motion has done, or previous projects have looked at SPLOST or TSPLOST?
Funny you should ask. I noted that there was an ACC Gov comprehensive plan in 2018 that designates Jefferson Road between the 10 Loop and Lavender for a future general business development. There have been 8 separate studies that recommended improvements to this corridor. And unfortunately, what's been approved so far hasn't gone to Jefferson Road.
Madeline, we have a multi-use path coming on Jefferson River Road. Old Jefferson Road is tier 1, so it's high priority for pedestrian facilities, and then bike facilities. I'll have to get back with you on the bike part.
Okay.
And
back to Teresa's question with Mark Ralston. Jennifer, if where are you feeling your most acute safety issues?
Safety issues would be at the intersections, and updates are needed for safe passage for any pedestrians. The railroad tracks, like I mentioned, they pose unusual issues with traffic backups. So the traffic around it, the streets around it, could be adjusted away from the railroad tracks so that it can give a more free-flowing traffic pattern on other access roads. Because I think people can get stuck out there, and it's kind of dangerous. And then when you throw in bicyclists or cyclists out there, it's just potential for somebody to get hurt.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? I did have something I wanted to add about that, not just this project, but in general about this type of project. But I don't want to cut off questions on this project.
Please go ahead, Keith.
So, I mean, one of the things that Jennifer mentioned, and you probably, if you haven't picked up, there's some other projects similar to this, is the scope is not clearly defined because until some of those, she mentioned there's 8 studies, but until we go through a process of prioritizing the work on there and doing some public input, the exact project that the public wants out there or needs may not be identified. It might be an intersection improvement at one place. It might be filling a sidewalk gap in another, or pedestrian crossing, or something like that. And so we call them bucket projects. There were several like this in the 2018 TSPLOST, one on Prince that stopped at the loop, one on Atlanta Highway and Lexington Road. So first part would be to go through and do those studies to determine what the needs are and where the greatest need is, and then put the money towards the construction of those improvements. There's some others that you will see like that if we hadn't already gotten to them, that are just buckets for to be determined projects, but the need for those usually far outweighs the request, and so that's just the way those kind of projects go. So, and then we usually do extensive public input once they're approved, and before we start building anything, to make sure what the public wants to see built.
Along those lines, Keith, do we usually have a user group for every accepted TSPLOST project, like all of them?
In general, I don't want to say all of them because there could be an exception, but the corridor projects that I mentioned, the Prince, Atlanta, Lexington, those all have user groups. The Firefly projects, Greenway projects. If a specific site, if I think there's in SPLOST 2020, there's a sidewalk on a specific road. Well, there's nothing really to have a user group about. The project is thou shalt build a sidewalk on this road. So that's what that is. But for the most part, most projects or sub-projects have some sort of user group, which is a user group for us is usually a split of half of the members on the group are staff, and half either are people that submitted a project or that might live in the neighborhood or might be users of the project, hence the word user group. So it's generally the other half is from that, and then there's some staff on there, and we generally come to a good consensus on what's to be done within that user group. Rarely do we have to take a vote, and if we do take a vote, there might be one dissenting member, or more. Sometimes there's more. I think we've got a couple of members on this group that have served on those user groups, and so we should work real hard to try to get the consensus on what the final project is.
Thank you, Keith. I think that's helpful for us to understand, like, what are the next steps and why we may not have the full clarity right now on what these projects might be. All right. Well, Jennifer, thank you for your presentation. Thanks for talking with us, and thank you for your service on the previous SPLOST. I hope we'll see you on a committee again soon.
Sounds
I don't know
good.
after that one. SPLOST 2021.
Thank you, guys.
All right. And for the current advisory committee, we are going to take a 5-minute break so we can come back fresh for our projects on Timothy Road and at the Atlanta Highway Timothy Mitchell Bridge intersection. So I will see y'all back here about 7:06.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to see if everyone is back yet. Right, see some videos popping up as I scroll. Okay. Next for tonight, we have project number 34, Timothy Westlake Multi-Use Trail, Middle Oconee River Bridge. And I believe we have Claude here presenting. Claude?
Yes, thank you so much. And again, as you've heard many times, I know over and over, we really appreciate the time and effort this takes. As part of that, I really hope to make this easy for you by showing how this project checks every box that you're asking for and brings a lot of value and equity to this area that really needs it. This project is for funding the land acquisition, design for, and construction of a pedestrian and bike bridge traversing the Middle Oconee River to provide street-to-street connectivity to neighborhoods off Timothy and Westlake Drive. It is a massive area with lots of connectivity. So I'm not the only one, and we're not the only one who says that there's a need for this project. It's mentioned in May Courts. It's a Athens in Motion Tier 1 and Tier 2 project, Project 89, and the Greenway Commission agree that there's a need for this bridge. And so I hope to show how this project is, again, an easy yes to make it as easy as I can for you. I'll show you how it checks all of the boxes, all of them, and most importantly, provides a much needed equity balance for the area. This area has not received any benefits of SPLOST or TSPLOST, and little in the way of capital improvement besides general pavement maintenance has occurred in this area. And the reason for that is mainly because this is just outside the city limits. So when the city was consolidated, our area was just outside of it. So you'll notice that there's a very sparse sidewalk map in the area that we're looking at. And so this is the sidewalk map. And so as seen here, there's an obvious lack of geographic equity in our area. But this bridge will give access to buses, the library, the ability for kids to walk to school. And it even give access to a historical site of the only surviving one-room schoolhouse for Black children in Clarke County. So both sides of the river would benefit from this project. And when you are looking at where the bridge could go, you'll be able to see clearly that you'd be able to move from one neighborhood directly across the river to the other neighborhood directly into the Beechwood area. And then let's talk about the need. This map shows the huge need for equity this project provides. Neighborhoods on Timothy Road contain a significantly higher than average percentage of residents of Black, Asian, Hispanic, disabled, elderly, poor, and zero vehicle families. What we see is the need, and as the last slide showed, there has not been any TSPLOST dollars spent to help. This shows how this project checks the box for equitability of capital improvement because it provides geographic equity and demographic equity. So 4,000 residents of the Timothy Road corridor gain access to public options with this project. And on the other side of the river, those residents get access to this side of the river and all of the amenities we have here. So it connects two giant areas together. And the shocking fact is that the lack of money spent in this area to help residents leave it to be the only place inside the loop that is over a mile from a bus stop. And so this project fixes that and gives residents access to 3 bus routes. One project gives access to 3 bus routes. And so this project checks the box of promoting alternative transportation and increased use of the transit system. Not only does this bridge mean fewer cars on the road, it makes Beechwood an easy option for shopping, where currently Oconee County is the easiest option for residents on this side of the river. So it highly incentivizes taking a bike or walking to the Beechwood area for your shopping because it provides a destination, something that we don't have right now. All we can do is walk around our general area. This provides a real place to go. And so that's another box checked. And by the way, if you're keeping score, that makes 11 boxes checked so far. But I promised you all of them, and so I'm going to show you how this will meet all of the options, all of the criteria that you're looking to meet. So I want to show this particular image again. So this image is of the 0 vehicle households above the regional average, and remind you that no benefits of SPLOST or TSPLOST have ever been realized by this part of Athens. And so this bridge makes a big change in the equity of this area. It gives access to these 0 vehicle families, access to bus routes, access as a way to more employment opportunities, because now they can get to the other side of the river to go to the Beechwood area and all of the businesses over on that side. So it increases their options significantly. The 4,000 residents of the Timothy Road corridor gain access to public options across the river, such as the library, middle and senior high schools, so kids will be able to walk or bike to school. And also there are 5 major churches off of Timothy, which would also benefit by their members in the east of the Middle Laconia being able to walk or bike to services or visit the historic landmarks we spoke about earlier. And of course, when you have people going back and forth and using cars less, and there's more and more activity in this area, that means fewer cars and then less pollution. Fewer cars then subsequently means better roads. So more alternative transportation leads to less vehicle miles traveled and less traffic congestion. And one of the main reasons is because this project reduces time spent traveling in vehicles. So providing a walking and biking option, you significantly lessen the automotive footprint. You know that to be clear. We've seen it over and over and over again. Well, this particular project turns a 5-mile drive, which is the only way to make it happen, is currently by driving, turns it into not only just a short walk or bike trip from one neighborhood over the bridge to another, but it also, as we talked about, makes the walker or the biker incentivized to do so because of how easy it would be by providing the destination for them to go to. And subsequently, this will lower traffic congestion. It makes a big impact on traffic congestion. It lowers traffic congestion on Timothy Road, Epsbridge Road, the Atlanta Highway, Hawthorne Avenue, Macon Highway, Westlake Drive, and Baxter Street. So you can also check off the box for implementing components of the updated Greenway Plan. Notably, this bridge was part of a record-breaking amount of feedback residents gave in public comments about the Greenway Plan recently. This shows that this area is very, very much desiring to have walkability options, is very much desiring to have ways they can move around alternative to vehicles. And now that there is somewhere to walk and bike to, exercise will increase. So there are currently too many cars on Timothy, and that's because, as we talked about, there's no other option. And now you could triple check some of those boxes that we talked about earlier, because the bridge turns, again, a 5-mile walk, or I'm sorry, a 5-mile drive into a short walk or bike from one neighborhood over the bridge to the other. And you know, there's a striking change in how people feel about speed and roadway safety when they themselves are on the sidewalk. Their mind is present of what it's like to be a pedestrian. This makes them better drivers when the event they do go on the road. But presently, because there's no destination to go to, there's no incentivization for the level of walkability to increase. So by adding this bridge, you increase not only the destination ability, but also the awareness of traffic safety concerns and pedestrian safety concerns. So it gets people a stake in what we're trying to accomplish by making better roads and access to public transportation. And this project does continue sidewalk and multi-use trail construction. So this will be a big component of being able to link future trails that might come through. And it gives us a great way to walk from one side of the river to the other side of the river, which we currently do not have any way of doing that. And one thing I would like to point out is that there will be other residents presenting. This will be not today, but another day. And they're going to present to you about a sidewalk and bike system on Timothy Road. This our project, the bridge, combined with that one, would make a huge impact in the area, an impact that we have needed for decades. Our area is neglected, our sidewalks are not good, and this bridge and those pedestrian improvements are warranted and will have a strong community support. The need for this project, again, has been talked about multiple times in May courts, the Athens in Motion Plan, and the Greenway Network Plan. And so I hope that I've shown that this project is an easy yes. I hope that I show that it just does check all of the boxes, all of them, and importantly provides a much needed equity balance. So when we think about how people will be able to increase employment, how you get a big bang for your buck of all the ways that this project impacts, and because of how many residents will gain access to something that they have no ability to access currently, mainly being bus routes and destinations to walk to, I really hope that you will see the value in this project. I greatly appreciate your time and the ability to present this project, and I'm available for any questions you have.
Thank you, Claude. Questions? And I think we had Jeff's hand was up first and then Patrina.
Yeah, hi. Back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I used to live on Timothy Road, and I always wondered why there was not a bridge between the bridges, because it is, of course, a very, very long way around. But having served on the Planning Commission for a number of years, I know that an obvious yes, something that you feel is needed, doesn't always get agreed to by the people from whom you might be trying to obtain right of way. Have you had any, overall, it sounds like it's very popular, but can you put the map up again, I guess, first of all? And
definitely. So we'll do.
I was looking, the location there. Have you talked to any of the landowners? And I hate to say this because it shouldn't be this way. I shouldn't have to say it. Have you talked to any of the landowners who would be directly impacted by a flood of bicycles? And I know it sounds silly, but have you talked to anybody who would be directly impacted, I guess, by a lot of two-wheel or walking traffic, or cars lining the road while they use it as a recreational path?
Yes, actually, the president of the neighborhood association really was talking about how excited they are that their daughter will be able to possibly ride a bike to middle school when she comes of age. So that's definitely a yes as far as the community wanting this type of improvement. And as far as the land goes, one of these parcels is for sale. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and go all the way back to the bigger map. All right, so one of these parcels is for sale, so that the line goes through. And then we have this long stretch of land here on the west side, and that's actually a park. So that's not buildable land. So it's a park that the neighborhood owns. And then we have right of way on the other side of the river. And so there would be very little land acquisition that we would really need to do for this project. But one thing I also want to point out is that this is a suggested location for this project. This is the purpose of this project is for the implementation and construction, an ultimate land acquisition, but not necessarily in this specific location, but it does meet a lot of criteria for it to be a great location.
Well, sure, yeah, having so much of it available. Okay, all right, yes. Easy, yes. Thank you.
No worries.
Patrina.
Okay, yeah, we've seen a lot of proposals, and this one is relatively expensive, and I can't even just imagine how to make a bridge cheaper. But if you could talk a little bit about how to maybe pare back on this, would these right-of-way considerations be adding to the cost, or are there any ways to make this less expensive and still get it done?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. So let me go ahead and just pull back here real quick. And so for one, I would like to ask Alex Bond if that's appropriate, about the cost of the design of this bridge. I'm not an engineer, so I can't necessarily speak to what is and is not necessary about a bridge, but I'm quite certain that we're really close to the necessity. And when we look at the cost versus the value, so this bridge brings a lot of value in our bus routes, in our equity that as we saw on the previous map, we have a significant amount of zero vehicle homes. We have a higher than average amount of minority families here and lower income families here. So you're getting a great amount of equity for this project. You're getting a great amount of walkability for this project, a great amount of bus service and public transportation use from this project. So the bridge itself is going to be the centerpiece of ultimately a bigger network that will come for our Greenway plan. So the Greenway plan and this bridge fit very nicely together. It fits very nicely in the Athens in Motion plan, and the other TSPLOST projects you'll hear later on Timothy Road, it fits very nicely into those plans as well. So I couldn't tell you how to pare this down because I don't have that engineering background, but I will say that there is a lot of value. It checks every box. It is a strong project for what it can bring to the table.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and put myself on stack. I know that we have some other folks speaking, but since you have talked about this project being in the Athens in Motion plan, can you help me find where this project is in the Athens in Motion plan? And maybe Alex might be able to help with it.
Project number 89, the James Devonshire Somerset section. So connecting those two areas together.
While I'm looking at that, Rocky, then Alan?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I live in this area, and I'm really excited to see this. I didn't know until now that it was submitted, so I support this idea, and I can speak to the fact that we're kind of landlocked. There's no way out of there except for by cars, by a vehicle. There's no bus. There's nothing. So if you don't have a car or a bicycle, good luck going to the grocery store.
Right.
So I support this project. So thanks, Claude. He's my neighbor, by the way. So
yeah, no worries. And just a thing that I'm personally going to be doing, if you ride your bike to Beechwood and get access to those 3 different bus lines, put your bike on the bus, you can go anywhere. Like you could theoretically now go to the Greenway Trail and enjoy that. You could go to 5 Points. There are a lot of options that this gives for bikeability and being able to freely move without the need of a car.
Alan?
All right. Yeah, thank you. I also live off Timothy Road, and it is a mile from my house to the nearest bus stop, and it would be 5 miles plus to get to the library from where I am or to Kroger. And I'm also a 1-car family, and that car has been in the shop with a new transmission for the last week and a half. And Timothy is not bikeable, so I tend to walk everywhere anyway, but now don't really have a choice. But this would give me a way to actually go get groceries and little things like that, which right now I have to walk down to the Kroger in Oconee County for such things. So this would be life-changing for me and a lot of other residents on the Timothy Road corridor.
Additional questions for Claude?
Can someone give me an address so I can go to my GPS and specifically locate the closest property to either bridgehead?
Yes, I could do that for you. Again, the location is not in stone. This was the
Right.
suggested location. Bear with me here. I will pull that for you.
215 River Hill Drive gives you the closest one on the north side of the river.
Okay, thank you.
And that's right. That's the street address right next to the public right of way that he's showing for connectivity.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And the presentation.
Yeah, no worries. Appreciate y'all's time.
Additional questions?
And it looks like 240 Devonshire might be the location of the park on the other side.
Okay.
Which is on a floodplain.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful park, by the way. If you haven't driven over there, you should. And so it's going to be a really exciting place to be able to not only hang out, but then go right across the river and take advantage of all those amenities on the other side. So it'll be a strong asset to the area.
And just for clarity, this bridge itself is not in the Athens in Motion plan, although certainly the connectivity has value and would be game changing for this area. Project 89 in the Athens in Motion plan is just for those neighborhood sidewalks and bike facilities. And the sidewalks are tier 1 and the bike facilities are tier 2, and that's for St. James, Devonshire, and Somerset.
I know you're the expert. Those roads are across from each other. The one's on one side of the river and one's on the other side of the river. So considering that it's one project concerning both sides of the river, a bridge was the logical choice. So if I misunderstood that, if I incorrectly read that, then I apologize. But it seemed like that the bridge was the answer.
The roads mentioned in the plan are all on the same side of the river, but that's fine.
I do not have my map up currently. 1 second, I can look at it and share that with you.
Or Claude, just given the existing infrastructure on both sides of the river, is there any, back to our, now what's going to be, I'm sure, a very popular question. Is there a temporizing bridge that would allow any kind of a beginning of flow across to both sides that could be considered? Or do we need to go just full bore, metal and concrete?
So from what we understand, there were no alternative construction options that we could be considering.
Alex or Keith, any thoughts on that, building on that?
It's Alex. I'll jump into that. Yeah, we were approached to assist at one of our open houses with this project. We used the standards for Greenway trails to guide the pricing for this, and that is the bridge actually featured in the background right there on the screen, and also been used a couple times. That's the standard that we use for all of our trails.
And it is probably about the least cost bridge for this area and that type of length of span. To be able to get out of the river buffers with the foundations and have that long a span. That's actually one of the longest spanning pedestrian bridges in the area behind him.
I believe
just out of curiosity from your map, where the bridge lands on the River Hill side, it lands in Athens-Clarke County owned property.
Mm-hmm.
Out of curiosity, why not take the trail right up to River Hill Drive?
I don't believe we. I think it was a ADA concern because of the rise of the land.
Okay, I don't know the property at all, so.
Yeah, again, the precise location it could be changed.
John?
Topography for that linear piece is very, very steep.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
John?
Yeah, I just wonder, I mean, with all the many boxes that you check, connectivity and equity and supporting increased use of access to and use of transit. I wonder if there are foundations or other organizations that might be able and willing to chip in on part of the cost of this. Have you all explored that?
We've always been looking for different options. I do not have any knowledge of one that would help with that. I know that this project has been in the Greenway Commission network plan, and so they obviously have looked for grant opportunities and those sorts of things. Again, I'm not an expert in those types of grant seeking types of abilities. However, I will say that the TSPLOST makes a lot of sense because this bridge greatly increases the economic value of the area. It greatly increases the desire for people to do shopping in Clarke County as opposed to Clarke County, and it's a revenue generator. Also, there is the big factor of a pedestrian bridge like this will increase property values because it will increase the walkability scores of the surrounding neighborhoods and provide more value to them. So that in turn would generate revenue for the county as well.
Additional questions for Claude or discussion about this project? All right, Claude, well, we thank you for your time. This is definitely a very exciting project. Certainly the bridge that goes over the North Oconee, connecting the University of Georgia campus to East Athens and East Side has been a big game changer. So we are, excited to be in the Oconee River.
Awesome. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And next on the list, move a little further up the road and go to Project 29, Atlanta Highway at Timothy Mitchell Bridge intersection. I'm sure an intersection we're all very familiar with.
Oh, yes.
And we have, is Janet here? Yes. Janet, can you hear us? Janet? Janet, if you're talking, you are muted.
I just unmuted her.
I wonder if she's having mic issues. We'll give her just a second. And just to let y'all know, since we are doing pretty well on time, we would like to spend a few minutes after our last presentation as a committee and talk about alternate projects in that process. So please stick around. And it looks like we have Janet unmuted now. Janet? Janet, we hear background noise, but we don't hear you. Mic check, check, check. All right, maybe I will send her a message. And what we might do is maybe mute Janice and come back to her because she might have stepped away for a moment. Oh, Sarah has offered to step in. Sarah, it's up to you. We can come back.
Either way is fine.
Let me call Janet real quick.
Yeah, Sarah, how about this? Since you're here and you're available, let's go ahead and have you get us started. So y'all, we're going to come back. I'm sure Janet will be here in just a minute. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Project 87. This is the 5 Points intersection safety improvements.
Hello.
And Sarah is here with us.
Janet, this
I think I just heard Janet.
we're got you unmuted, waiting on you to get on the phone.
Oh gosh, you guys are running way ahead. Okay, give me just a second, okay?
We're going to go ahead with one of the presentations. We'll come back to you in about 20 minutes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay.
Bye. Well, how's bells? I turned it
Well,
on.
hell's bells, go right there, baby. When you're done,
Okay,
just
you're
read
muted.
Yeah.
Back. There you go, Sarah.
Okay.
For Project 87, and I will mute myself.
That's right. Let me.
Yeah. Sarah, do you need us to drive or you got it?
I just realized, hold on, just give me a second here. I'm more used to Zoom and need to make sure. Actually, I will have you guys drive.
Okay.
If you've got that handy, Keith.
Yeah, give me just a second.
Okay.
And when you need to advance, just say next, and I'll be happy to move on to the next one.
Okay, great.
Come on, Zoom. There we go. It's all yours.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm Sarah Beresford, and thanks in advance to all of you serving on the committee. I was on the SPLOST 2020 committee and very familiar with how much time that you've already put in and are about to put in. I'm here to present a proposal to improve the safety of the 5 Points intersection. Next slide. So the goal of this project, maybe I'll back up a second and give you a little bit of history. This is an intersection that people have been concerned about its safety for years. It's been identified not just by people who live in the 5 Points area, but also by the county and others. It's an important intersection for the county and something that we want to see be improved for all users. So the goal of this project is to implement comprehensive changes to improve the safety of the intersection for all users, including pedestrians, cyclists, transit, and vehicles. These proposed improvements will create a safer intersection for drivers, walkers, and cyclists, improve the safety associated with turning UGA and ACC transit buses at the intersection, and create small public spaces at the node that provide improved safety, sightlines, and aesthetics. Next slide. So what does that actually mean? When we put this project together, this proposal together, we worked with a landscape architect to come up with sort of a generalized set of drawings about what types of changes could be implemented to improve this intersection. So although I provide this sketch, it is by no means how this project would necessarily look. That would be something that a user group would determine down the road. But this gives a general sense for the types of things that could happen, including relocating existing sidewalks to shorten and improve pedestrian walk time, converting the existing strain poles to mast arms, improving the pedestrian and wheelchair ramps, improving pedestrian refuges at corners, evaluate and improve the curb radii at key corners of the intersection, update the signal control and timing, and overall aim to reduce car, pedestrian, bike conflict points. Next slide. So why is this important? Why this intersection? So this intersection is a major hub of transportation and commercial activity with multimodal activity that serves all of Athens and surrounding communities. There are safety concerns. There are a lot of accidents, a lot of near misses that traffic data doesn't capture, a nearby school, and a high volume of UGA student drivers. As many of you use this intersection probably on a daily basis, you know that the intersection has terrible geometry, has unusually long crosswalks, irregular abutting properties, and corners and driveways and curb cuts that are inside of the intersection itself. Next slide. So the larger picture of these types of intersections is that they're known to be difficult. Five-pointed intersections are notoriously challenging around the country, but some of the creative solutions that other communities have used to address similar problems, like roundabouts or transforming the intersection, are not feasible due to existing buildings and infrastructure. We have the additional challenge, of course, that Millage Avenue is a state highway. The ACC Department of Transportation and Public Works has also identified this intersection as an area of concern and has already implemented some measures, such as signal timing adjustments, to improve safety. These proposed improvements are consistent with goals outlined in the Athens in Motion plan. Next slide. So how does this proposal support TSPLOST program goals and selection criteria? First, with the economic prosperity goal, which provides capital expenses needed to achieve planned action items. By improving the safety of this node, the proposed project helps Athens move towards several of the goals identified by Athens in Motion, including connectivity, equity, more users, and implementation, providing a variety of different funding mechanisms to finance and maintain the network. It also touches on social well-being by improving the safe and equitable access to public transportation facilities, including transit, crosswalks and sidewalks, and cyclists. And environment supports other transportation-related capital expenses needed to achieve action items identified in previously adopted plans. Next slide. Specifically, this addresses the selection criteria, promoting the goal of improving equitability of capital improvements throughout the community by increasing safety and access for multiple modes of transportation for all users of an intersection that serves all of Athens. Promotes the upgrade and continued use of alternative transportation facilities with safer bike lanes, crosswalks, sidewalks, and transit access, and promotes health and safety, improves the safety for pedestrians and cyclists in this area. Next slide. A safer, more vibrant, walkable, more accessible 5 Points intersection enhances the livability for all of Athens, including pedestrians, cyclists, and transit users. As Athens moves towards its shared vision of strong neighborhoods, increased public safety, equitable access, healthy lifestyles, and an increased range of transportation options, the 5 Points node is one of several nodes that have an important role to play. Thank you. The next couple of slides, Keith, I have them there in case folks want to look more closely at the intersection, and the next one is the drawing that I provided earlier.
All right. Well, I'll stop sharing for now. I can put them back up if somebody wants to see them.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Questions on the 5 Points intersection? Rocky, do you have your hand up for this one?
I do not. I can go
Okay.
at the end of the line though. I want to see what others have to say first.
Okay. Frank has his hand up. Frank.
Yeah, I'm that was my traffic post in the 70s as a police officer after Georgia football games, and I have not seen any major improvements in that area. And I think they gave me that assignment as punishment after football games, but it does in fact need some improvements, big time.
Yeah, it's really tricky. And I think that I think that the existence of, or the fact that that millage is a state highway, I think has prevented a lot of improvements that have been proposed in the past. And I think one of the changes I've seen in the last few years is GDOT staff more open and willing to work with Athens on.
Good.
So
that was going to be my next question. Yeah, thank you.
That's the hope.
Jennifer? Jennifer, are you there? You might be muted. Jennifer, we cannot hear you. All right, we will come back to her. Anyone else have questions for Sarah? Madeline, are you raising your hand?
I apologize for this. Can you put up the image of the 5 Points? And I know you said there was, in addition to the aerial, perhaps a concept design plan. As is the 5 Points at Atlanta Highway and Hancock. Just a pretty treacherous convergence of trouble. Help me understand what the scope of work here is kind of prioritized that you would like to see fix this.
Are you asking like if you had to prioritize the list of fixes, what would kind of come first?
Yes, please.
Sure. There is evidence that simply making crosswalks more visible in and of itself is a huge thing. But one of the, if you look at the sketch, I think the thing that if you really spend time in that intersection and you see kind of where the problems stem from, one of the problems is the Golden Pantry gas station on the corner. And in the sketch, you see that it's been kind of redeveloped into sort of a public pedestrian plaza where the gas station is gone, and you're able to address that corner. That corner by itself is a huge problem. So you want to get the curb cuts out of the intersection. You want to be able to bring the crosswalk that's that would be connecting, I guess what that would be sort of that running store corner and that gas station corner. That's a very long very long crosswalk. So I think from a prioritization standpoint, in my view, is acquiring a piece of that property, and which we know is a possibility. Those property owners are open and willing to have that conversation, and willing to sell. And so to get those two crosswalks that connect that corner shorter. And so if you look at that drawing a little more closely, you see that the crosswalk that leads from that corner over to the corner where marker 7 is, that instead starts to have a more protected pedestrian refuge there, and that enables you to shorten those crosswalks, get that right turn, those right turning buses behind that, and sort of getting those crosswalks shorter. So crosswalk visibility shortening. And the other thing I would say is that there's a belief that just really evaluating and making big adjustments to signal timing and maybe changing the style of signals in a way that promotes a kind of a sense of arrival into the intersection. I think that the change that overall kind of needs to happen there is a sense that when drivers are coming into this intersection, that's this gateway to downtown and this gateway to the university and this gateway over to Prince Avenue, to also kind of promote aesthetically the sense of like, this is a place where you slow down. There's businesses, there's people, there's these major roads that are coming into this area that has quite a bit of commercial activity. So it's kind of a lot of things, but I think that's how I would prioritize them.
You know, it's interesting you would say that, because I'm originally from Atlanta and my husband is an Emory graduate. There is a roundabout at a 5 Points that has stunned me over the last 10 years. I mean, there is so much convergence of everybody's, form of wheels that, moves them forward. And it is pedestrians, it's almost trains, but it's certainly buses and cars and bikes and people and 50,000 students. And it is the calmest 5 Points. I don't know if you know what I'm speaking of, but
Yeah.
Everybody's pizza is there. Emory University's gateways are there. And I hear exactly what you're saying. And, I would love that for this area and also that Atlanta Highway,
Yeah.
Hancock area.
Me too. I think this deal where we have a state highway and that fire station, I think there's some things that make a roundabout. It kind of takes a roundabout off the table, but I do think that would be, my dream solution would be a roundabout in precisely the style you're describing.
Right. Well, thank you for this. This is
Yeah.
very.
I was wondering that too, Madeline, like if a roundabout was on the table or if it was just too tight of a configuration. So I do want to check in with Jennifer since she'd have her hand up earlier. Jennifer, are you there?
I am here. I did have my hand up. My question was answered. Sorry for having technical difficulties again.
No problem. We're all in this together. Teresa.
I just want to just share a couple of observations. Recently, I've been going through that intersection a lot. And my biggest observation is that pedestrians are really scared to cross, even at the flashing beacon locations. They press the button, the thing starts flashing, and then they just sort of hang back waiting until they think the car is coming or not going to kill them. So that's an educational problem that we need to solve countywide. But looking at traffic in that intersection, it's always congested. I haven't been through it one time when it hasn't been congested, and nothing moves fast. I don't see speeding as a problem here. I see the problem as elevating the status of the pedestrian and making pedestrians much more visible I like how you've configured those crossings there. I think that's a better approach to, to getting people from point A to point B, and it eliminates those really long runs, which are terrible. So anyway, that's really just all I wanted to say. I think it's a good project, and thank you for bringing it to us.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a case where I've always felt like congested traffic is that's not really, from a sort of non-car user standpoint, that's actually a better situation, right? The cars aren't going that slowly, but I think you're right on its visibility. And something that sketch doesn't really capture very well is that what people kind of refer to as that Lumpkin rise. Like if you're driving on Lumpkin, like if you're coming from the UGA track, if you do happen to catch it when there's not that much traffic, it's a really poor visibility. The way that you cross the 5 Points intersection on Lumpkin Avenue is a really sketchy thing for all users, actually, especially if there's any speed involved. But yeah, it's all about visibility. And we have kind of a challenge in Athens in general. You mentioned the education piece of things, which I think is really important. And in fact, I have one teenage driver in my house and another one on the way. And I always say to them, like, remember, we get about 10,000 freshmen every year coming to this town, driving their cars. That's a lot of teenage drivers that we're adding. And so that makes the education piece of things kind of challenging, because you have a lot of young drivers and distracted drivers. So
Texting.
yes.
Yeah, I was recently rear-ended at this intersection, and I've also been in a bike wreck at this intersection where I clipped at the Golden Pantry. I clipped my bike pedal on the curb, but it was great because 2 weeks later there was an apron there, so it's now flush, and so my problem was solved. But that never happens in transportation world, where 2 weeks later your problem's solved. And I was fine. I was just embarrassed because I fell in the middle of 5 Points. But certainly there's a lot of challenges through here. Of course, there's the buses coming down Millage trying to make that left-hand turn on the Lumpkin. So yeah, you guys have your work cut out for you in terms of like designs, and I wouldn't know where to begin. So I thank you for trying to tackle it and present us with a vision. Additional questions for Sarah or comments about this intersection or this project?
Something I did want to mention, I put a note in the proposal about this, but the property acquisition budget line item of this proposal is the absolute worst case scenario. And in fact, when we first put this proposal together, that was significantly less. So now it got up to $900,000, and we didn't ever think it would be getting over about $250,000. And although I still believe that lower scenario is very realistic, I just wanted to point that out because that relates, I think the reason why Transportation Public Works asked me to increase that line item was because there are question marks about how that property acquisition, what that would cost, whether it's acquiring part of it, all of it, covering redevelopment costs, et cetera. So I just wanted to point that out. That's really a worst case scenario that I think pushes the project costs up quite a bit.
Sarah, are you speaking specifically of the Golden Pantry?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And their willingness to sell?
That we know is true. I think what we just don't know the like the specifics of that, whether it would be partial or whether that it would be necessary to acquire the entire property and then sell part of it. And I just think that it's hard to know what that would be until we sort of know exactly what the project would look like and what the terms of that would be. So it is something that kind of makes it made it a little trickier to do the budget this time around.
Right. Well, it's kind of exciting. I mean, I don't know the family particularly well, but I think they're a very conscientious corporate family. So I'm encouraged to imagine that they would really want to cooperate with you.
I get that. My connection to them is an indirect one, and I get the same impression that they would be. I think this was their original Golden Pantry site, so I think that they do actually care quite a bit about this this area.
That's interesting because it's a multi-generational. I mean, I think it's 3 generations of members of the same family. So,
Oh, interesting. I don't think
heard.
Yeah. So it's great to have folks like that who, you know, I don't think they're just trying to get out of, they're not trying to, you know, they probably need to recover their costs, but it's not, it's more of a community-minded thing.
Right. Wonderful.
Any other questions from the committee?
I had one just along the same lines, if it's okay.
Go right ahead,
Sarah,
Jennifer.
in your budget, did you include any kind of extra costs for the environmental cleanup issues? And that sounds bad, and I'm not meaning it to sound bad, but that are related to convenience stores and gas stations.
That is part of why Transportation Public Works suggested bumping that up. Is it, you're talking about buried gas tanks
Yeah, and
specifically?
bills, I mean, you know, just from being a gas station.
That's right. So I think that that's one of the reasons that got kind of rolled into the property acquisition
Okay.
budget line, because it would factor into kind of redevelopment costs.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you for the
Mhm.
clarification.
John, then Katie. John, are you muted?
John said he's good. Go ahead.
He's good. Yeah.
Okay. Katie.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the utilities that you said were an obstacle to reimagining the intersection. Is that like the traffic lights, or are they buried?
I think that is specifically relates to more kind of public infrastructure like the fire station and the need
I
to
see.
sort of keep things accessible. It's funny, actually, when I said that just now when I was presenting, I realized I was kind of using the wrong word. I don't think, otherwise, like buried lines, I don't think that is something that Transportation Public Works saw as a particularly large problem, but it has more to do with sort of access.
Access. All right, good to know. Yeah, I'm actually not a big fan of that roundabout in Atlanta, although I haven't been in person. It seems a bit suburban, and I'm just trying to Google. There are little town squares in England where it is actually a one-way system, but you know the center of it isn't a giant circle. It's like one statue or something. But everyone's going extremely slowly, and the cars are just mixing with people because they're going so slowly. We probably aren't quite that scale in 5 points, but I'm definitely gonna look into other. I'd love for us to keep looking into reimagining. But that said, I think you're focusing on exactly the right problems. You know, shortening those crosswalks and giving people walking real refuges and barriers from cars. So I think it's a great project.
Thanks.
Sarah, so along the lines of the bike stuff, do you guys have any ideas about moving bikes through that intersection? Or are you going to wait and see? And I mean, so Millage Avenue is tier 1 for bike facilities. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, you know, in the next year or two or anything like that. So I was just wondering if y'all had any initial thoughts about that.
The way that bikes have factored into this planning have been to create bike boxes. Redoing the I'm sorry, I'm losing my words. Redoing those crosswalks also can provide an opportunity to get bike boxes in, and I'm assuming that you all have maybe talked about bike boxes in this committee already, or just what the idea of a bike box is. It has to connect. It's not what it sounds like. It's not a place to store bikes. It's actually something that's at a stop line at an intersection that allows bikes a safe place to stop at a light. So the trick is that you have to make sure that, and that bike boxes are brought up I think in the Athens in Motion plan, with the idea that you're connecting the shared use paths and the bike lanes with bike boxes so you have safe places for bikes to stop. That's the way that bikes have come in to play. One of the tricky things about bikes, of course, I hope one day that Millage Avenue really does, you know, whether I hope that that's carried out, that you get these bike lanes on there that are actually real bike lanes that really protect cyclists. But at the intersection itself, I think that that's something that would probably have to happen at the user group level, depending on the timing of things. Like, let's say if this project were included in the slate and the referendum passed, maybe it happens, I don't know how many years into it would happen, and it would also connect then to where things were with the tier 1 bike projects in Athens in Motion. That I'm kind of kicking the can down the road, but I think that the cyclist safety there is really important too, and that would have to be kind of part of those user group discussions.
Certainly, yeah, and don't feel bad about kicking a can down the road. There's a lot of cans that are going to get kicked down the road.
Yeah.
And for the committee, I will post a video on what a bike box is. It's called a 2-stage turn queue box, and so you guys can watch that if you would like to know more about that. We have a couple on Lumpkin. But Sarah, I think we are at the end of time. So I thank you for your presentation.
Great,
Thank you
thank
for coming
you.
forth with your vision.
Sure. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night. All right, so going back in our list, checking on Janet. Are you here, Janet?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you are very clear.
Okay, very good.
Yes. So this is Project 29, Atlanta Highway at Timothy Mitchell Bridge Road intersection.
Hi, everybody. My name is Janet Prince. My husband and I own a business on Mitchell Bridge, and we're working on 20 years that we've had a business on Mitchell Bridge Road. I've lived in Athens since the early 70s. I used to ride the bus up and down Mitchell Bridge Road. I went to the, in the early 80s, my last drive-in movie was right there at that intersection that we're talking about. And Keith, are you going to be able to pull up the slides?
I can. I was just I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was about to know if you wanted me to do it or you're going to do it.
Yeah, if you could do that'd be great.
All right. There you go.
So, thank you so much. So I've spent basically my whole life, I lived on the west side my whole life, my business, and traveled this area for many, many, many years. So what we're talking about is that intersection right there where Mitchell Bridge crosses over into Timothy Road, over the Atlanta Highway. And so, Keith, I'm a little unclear. Are you going to move that slide for me, or do I just say next?
There you go.
Okay, I got you. Okay. So the Atlanta Highway is, it's a main east-west access of the city of Athens. Extremely trafficked. There's usually between 20 to 30,000 cars, vehicles going in both directions every day. The northbound and southbound Timothy Road and Mitchell Bridge intersect with Atlanta Highway at very sharp angles. Meaning if you're coming from Mitchell Bridge and you try to cross the intersection, your sight line is cut off because you've got kind of a sharp angle, and so you can't really see where you're going to get across, except you just follow the road. Dangerous crossings for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists due to poor visibility, short light cycle lengths, and lack of crosswalk and bike lane markings. Transit stops converge at this intersection. Yeah. So we're right here talking about Mitchell Bridge. So when you're crossing here, you lose visibility big time, and it just causes a lot of crashes or wrecks. The same way coming this way. This is so congested here. If you guys have ever tried to come out from the Sports Academy, this shopping center, or that's a CVS right there, you trying to come out and turn left, it's a nightmare. It's really dangerous, really dangerous. So, and you can do the next one if you want, Keith. So yeah, the transit. So there's several transit stops in that area. And I know for a fact that people that live on the Timothy Road side, sometimes, well, not just that side, but they don't feel comfortable going through that intersection. So it cuts down on commerce, let's say going to Aldi's or Publix or wherever, because it's very, very congested there. And as far as the transit goes, there is so more and more and more. It's really scary trying to watch. I'm talking about pedestrians right now, but the pedestrians trying to cross those crosswalks, it's scary to me. I mean, because you can't really see them. There's so much going on in that intersection. And then there are the transit stops that would, I think, if we could make it more user-friendly for everyone concerned, I think it would help the whole situation. Let's see, is that the last one, Keith, or you can go to next? Yeah, just talking about how dangerous it is. You guys can see where the majority of, there's wrecks. And even where the Chick-fil-A, if you come out of the Chick-fil-A, that whole situation there it just all converges into that main intersection right there. And it's just, it's really dangerous to me. And there's just, like I said, a whole lot going on. So there is, that's from the Wells Fargo going out of town and the Atlanta highway. And then I think there should be a picture of the gas station there, Keith, or we're not quite to it yet, but you can see the crosswalks. It's just showing you, yeah, there's the gas station there. So right here, that's this gas station. And that is now vacant. And I believe that can be purchased. And that would mean this is Mitchell Bridge here, instead of Mitchell Bridge coming and doing this big hook sort of curve, and where all this congestion is here, it might be possible then to bring it just straight across. So there'd be a better sight line, or perhaps like we were talking earlier, some other kind of configuration, maybe like a roundabout. That's be a lot of cars there, but major cities do have them where there's a lot of traffic. And I don't know the answer to that, but this is the former fire station. So we could cut through there and then work right through where this vacant gas station is. So the bottom line on that is the goals for the project. Let's see. Let me go back to that. The goals for the project are to rebuild the intersection, to facilitate through and turning traffic in all directions, to connect communities north and south of the Atlanta highway, for Vision Zero, which is to design for pedestrian bicyclist safety with 0 fatalities, to have a seamless connection, which is to integrate design with Atlanta Highway, Athens in Motion Project 114 with Timothy and Mitchell Bridge sidewalks. It's a western gateway to Athens. Give it a sense of place where people will walk and bike to business, transit, and recreation. And I think along with that, just the vision, if we could think into the future a little bit, where if we could get people to want to walk or want to bike, even in a area like that, would really be a huge plus for the neighborhoods that are on the Timothy Road side as well as the Mitchell Bridge side. So the bottom line for the project is it's over $6 million, $6,550,000. Part of the, I guess it would help to close the equity gap by building crossings for people who do not have access to cars, super important, providing access to transit services, serving an area with multifamily dwellings, meet strategic commitments and project selection criteria, which would include the environment, which would improve traffic movements, less idlings, social well-being, create a safe and beautiful Western gateway to Athens, help with economic prosperity, bring customers who do not want to drive to businesses across Atlanta Highway. The triple bottom line would be encourage use of transit, reduce hazards to pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers, and create a welcoming interest to Athens and improve access to businesses. I think you guys know the Atlanta Highway, I'm sure. And really, when you go past that intersection, you go down the hill, the intersection where Panera Bread is, it's safe, it's just right. And then things start to get a little bit nicer, where you veer off and take that exit to Epps Bridge. So this would just help to create or connect another stretch that would turn the Atlanta Highway into something, I believe, a little more pleasing, and help to make it a little more like we've been talking about, welcoming to our city. So that's what I've got for tonight. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Janet. Questions from the committee. Katie, is that your hand up? And I see Frank's in there. Okay, so Rocky, then Frank.
Hi. So I know that the transit options, if you could go, well, we don't need to go to your transit slide, but transit does not go down that portion of Timothy at all. Is that something that could be considered in this, or it's probably not related to this project, but so that's my first question. And then the other question is, and the improvements are street lights included in that? That's a very dark area all the way down from Target all the way until you get towards the mall. That whole section of Atlanta Highway is pretty dark. Excuse me.
Well, I'm not really sure about the lighting. I don't have the answer to that question. I'm not real sure about that, but I can see what you're talking about as far as how it does get really dim at night from that stretch that you were saying, or that you were speaking of.
Yeah, all the way down. I know your project doesn't go that far down, so I should have formulated my question a little better. But in the area you're talking about, even, it's extremely dark and adds to the safety at nighttime that you are talking about, specifically that intersection.
Well, there's more than two, and I don't have them all in my brain. But I just know the pedestrian traffic, not only, crossing at the intersection, but just walking up and down the Atlanta Highway. I mean, it's really, it's getting more and more and more and more. And I really see people using those transit, those transit stations, waiting for their buses or, to make those connections. So I think that if it could be just more safe, that's the bottom line. And I didn't mention this, but the most important part is that gas station, I think, could be purchased for $1.5 million. And that would really be a good option to help make all of that connect together.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little unclear too as to, I don't think your presentation indicated the concept of connecting. Because even if you went through the gas station, it's still a sharp angle back to Mitchell Bridge and a sharp angle off of Timothy to cross Atlanta Highway.
So if you look at where, I don't know if you guys still have, if we can get back to that, but if you look at where the fire station is, you guys know where that is on Mitchell Bridge? I think that's the idea, is to connect from, let's see, hold on. Yeah, right here. Thank you. To connect. And so instead of going this way, to connect more, yes, like this. So you would have more of a straight line of visibility versus a curved line. And this is where the problem occurs. You can't see. If you're coming here, you can't see what's coming at you. And vice versa. If you're coming this way, you really, you know, once you get here, you can, but this is extremely dangerous. So I think that's the idea, is to take Mitchell Bridge and then connect from here through here. And that way you would eliminate that curve.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Frank, then Jennifer, and then I want to get to Patrina's comment, then Teresa.
Yeah, I'll be real brief. Again, we've got the issue of Atlanta Highway being a major state highway. And I don't know, but I was told early on that as the fire station out there was vacated, that was part of what they were going to do, was to use that property for that intersection improvement. And I was surprised to see the Golden Pantry go out of business. So that does present some opportunities. But I'm always going to throw it out there, though. Atlanta Highway is a major state highway, and I don't know if GDOT has could play any role in that redevelopment. I know that our commissioner said that the GDOT has been they did approve a project up there to redesign the intersection near the mall, the Loop 10 area up there. But the straightaway, I don't think there are any plans on that, what you just presented tonight. But
Yeah.
it does need, I travel it every day, and I can tell you it's a mess, period.
Yeah, and Frank, you're right. There is a GDOT project, and the boundaries, the end of that project, are at this intersection and does not include this intersection, unfortunately. Right. So yeah, you're exactly right. So Jennifer, Patrina, Teresa, and then Katie.
When Frank asked question, I was just wondering how CDOT could participate in this, because I would think they would be very concerned. Did you hear my question?
You were breaking up, but I think you said that you were wondering how GDOT would participate because you thought they would be very concerned, or
Basically, I was asking the same question that Frank asked. You know, I would think that GDOT would be concerned about this intersection because it is an odd angle. But you just gave the example of the project that they're doing down the road, where this intersection is the boundary of that other project. So they obviously know about it and have it low on their list of priorities.
Jennifer, your sense is right, and I'm sure there's actually some people on this committee who know this pretty well. This is on a project list. It's on May Courts. It's been on there for a long time. It's just there's a lot of other stuff on there. So you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Stand in line and take a number.
Right.
I hear you.
All right. Patrina, did you want to share your comment?
Sure. It's yeah, we've seen a lot, we've seen several presentations, and I think we are all aware of that intersection. I think a couple other proposals spoke to this. One being, or I'm wondering if it spoke to this. There's one on traffic signaling. I'm just wondering, like, if you could sort of regulate the flow of traffic, like so all the cars aren't converging at the same time. So we had a signal project that might address that. We also had another one on safe routes to school, which did a lot of intersection work. Yeah, it's well, long story short, it seems like a high ticket item, and I wonder if there were some overlaps that might in other proposals that might speak to the same concerns. So it's more of a comment that we might have it covered in other ways.
Thank you, Katrina. And yeah, it's certainly possible that there, certainly some signals could help, but I think that there's a lot of design with this intersection that wouldn't necessarily be covered by that, but we should certainly be keeping this in mind. Teresa?
Hi, thank you, Janet. Great presentation. Okay, so I've been involved in the Atlanta Highway User Group, and from what I know, GDOT is at present not interested in fixing this intersection. They're concerned with that east-west traffic flow. And for whatever reason, the crossing isn't, in their department. But as far as, how to fix that intersection, it's complicated. The geometry is terrible. And I don't know that anyone has really said, yeah, this is how we can fix it. But I do know that that parcel of land where that vacant gas station is, that's really kind of key to improving it. If we can purchase that land, then we open up options for how to fix the intersection. So even if we aren't going to like approve the whole price tag for fixing this intersection right now, I mean, at least if we could, green light getting that property so that, we've got that one piece in place to, let us plan for the future and really build it in a way that works for more people and more users.
Thank you, Teresa. Katie?
Yeah, that kind of answered my question a bit. I wondered if there's any, if anyone actually walks and bikes here, are people trying to cross the street? All right, Alan is. Good to know. I'm just thinking, I know.
We don't walk across the street, we jog across the street and hope for the best. But I
see.
Multiple times a week.
And the question, I don't know if it's for anyone who knows, maybe this working group, are you thinking also about the land uses along the corridor? Wasn't there a county study about reimagining the whole Atlanta highway? How would this tie into it? Does anyone know?
Yeah, Katie, there's been a whole bunch of studies. There's the Connect Athens corridor study, which looked at Atlanta Highway and Lexington. And I'll post a link to those in the chat. They're pretty detailed, and they're not just about transportation, but a whole vision for it. So I will be happy to share that with you.
Yeah, I think Mike Hamby chaired that, I believe, the study which she's talking about. I've had a lot of conversations with them about that. They got their work cut out for them.
And I do want to call everyone's attention to the chat because I was just about to look this up. And Alan, you found the project in GDOT's list. Do you want to share that?
Actually, somebody else listening found that and gave me that information and a little graphic that I don't have the link to yet, but if I get it, I'll send it through.
All right, 2041.
Wow.
Here we go. Yeah, I guess if this isn't funded by TSPLOST this year, that's
but again, they're more, like Lisa said, they're more interested in the east-west, that I would believe, but I would think that they would think in order to get the east-west right, they'd have to get this.
Rocky, you have your hand up?
No, That was from the previous, sorry.
I'm just going to address real quick. I can tell you one thing that moves projects up on GDOT list is when you own the property. Is when a municipality or a county owns property and or is willing to participate and contribute to it. It can help move it up on list.
Thank you, Keith. Oh, Teresa, I hope we get this project done well before you die or any of us die. All right. Any additional questions or comments about this intersection, this project? All right. Well, we thank Janet. Thank you for your time. Yeah, I was looking at some, I was actually looking at some old aerial photographs and maps of Athens, trying to figure out, like, how this intersection got to be designed this way. It looks like they, plowed Atlanta Highway right through the elbow and redid Timothy Road, and it just wasn't great. But on to our next project for tonight is, make sure I didn't skip one. Number 80, completed Barber Street Ped and Bike, Prince plus Greenway expand. So there's a lot to this project. And Michael, are you online? Michael, can you hear us? We can't hear you. I'm sorry. I can see you though. That's better. You're still a little quiet.
I need to speak louder?
That's better.
All right. Am I really the last presentation out of everything or just tonight?
Just tonight.
All right.
Oh yeah, I guess you are.
We're only halfway through with the total of presentations, if that.
Okay. Since I'm last tonight, you're either all the way checked out or it'll be the last thing you remember. I hope it's the latter.
It's the finale. Be the finale.
Well, my presentation will be slightly different than the ones that you've heard tonight, because really I'm advocating for these two projects to be done together. And I think that ACC, Transportation and Public Works, has already submitted for the bike lanes on Barber. And Parks and Leisure Services already has a vision for the expanded Greenway. So really, for years, these projects have already been developed by visionaries, engineers, and community advocates. And I'm looking at the importance of trail networks connected, intertwined with bike and pedestrian options are critical for economic and social growth in Athens, while caring for the health and residents and stewarding natural resources for decades to come. I want to thank you for your consideration of these projects and give you just a quick little history lesson of how I got involved and interested in these two projects. So I started working on the General Cox project 4 years ago. And before even purchasing the property, my first meeting was with ACC Leisure Services. It was a quick hello. We sat down, they looked at a map, and they said, if you can go to the next slide, and the next slide, sorry.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to share it.
Yes, please.
This one?
Well, that's my hello. You can go ahead to the next one with the map. So as soon as I sat down nope, back one.
Okay. When
I sat down with Leisure Services, and you can see where General Time is, you can see where Power Partners, Georgia Power is, Evergreen Packing. ACC already owns some of these critical pieces that would create a full loop from the Greenway with simply crossing the river. So they said to us, what we would need is a trailhead. Well, fast forward to next month, we are putting in a mountain bike skills track, working with the Southern Off-Road Biking Association. And at the same time, we're going to be working on reactivating the metal sheds at the back of the property, which will have public restrooms. So we look forward to the near future of being a trailhead if and when the Greenway comes full circle. If you'll go to the next slide, I'll tell you real quickly about another encounter I had with then Commissioner Kelly Gertz. And after meeting at General Time, Kelly walked us to the parcels that ACC already owns there on the railroad tracks. And Mayor Gertz said, can you imagine, and I've heard this used a number of times tonight, the word game changer. Can you imagine what a game changer it would be if the youth and the families of Athens could get on the Greenway at any point and have a full loop so they can access the recreational fields at Holland Youth Sports Complex, which actually got sidewalks thanks to the last work that you guys did at TSPLOST. So the story isn't really about General Time. The story is about a whole section at this 12 o'clock on the dial part of Athens that has had limited access to goods and services and recreation. And across the nation, you see communities and parts of towns like this separated by highways, which the loop has done. At one point, there were sidewalks that were going to come down Chase, but that didn't work. And I think the sidewalks coming straight from downtown, down Barber, will actually create, a more diverse economy and population. And if you look at a hub and spoke kind of concept of including areas around downtown. So if you can go to the next slide. You can see the Barber Trail here and some of the organizations that have worked on these concepts. We've got in section 3, I think it's important to mention there's the newly sanctioned homeless shelter. So one of my big concerns is that this could get funded to do the sections from downtown and then stop and not make it to General Time. But again, this isn't about General Time. This is about connectivity. This is about access. This is about tying communities together. And with the homeless shelter there midway, if this isn't brought full circle all the way to our front door, really you're just directing the homeless back towards downtown. So I think it's important to give them access to green space, access to get to the other side of the loop so they can have access to the jobs that are currently there, whether it be Georgia Power, Power Partners, Evergreen Packing, plenty of blue collar jobs there. And then, we've got 350 jobs coming from Wayfair at General Time. They will be live second quarter of next year. And that's just the beginning of the job creation that we're going to have in this district, since we are the equivalent of 6 city blocks here at General Time. So we're looking forward to more jobs, more employment opportunities here for the General Athens community. So again, the homeless, this is a way to go beyond sheltering them. This is really a way to connect them, not just to downtown, but to all these things that they need for physical, mental, and job creation for them. And if you can go to the next slide. So Atlanta often comes to mind when you talk about trails and connectivity and greenways. And a big part of Ryan Gravel's thesis, Ryan, the founder who conceived the Beltline while he was at Georgia Tech, a big part of it is referred to as the Emerald Necklace. So you see the series of parks around the Beltline. That's really what has had the major impact, because you get companies that want to come to places that have this kind of connectivity. So you'll get companies, a lot of IT companies are focused on areas like this. And really, whether it's Atlanta, Greenville, Nashville, Bentonville, Arkansas, really it's about the impact, the return on investment. And you can see there that the return on investment for the Beltline has been an 8-to-1 ratio. And I think that when you look at a lot of the projects that will submit on your list, and there've been some fantastic presentations, you know, when you get to there's going to be less traffic, cleaner air, more usage, the mental health benefits, the connectivity. We all check all those boxes. It's really looking at a map and seeing what's going to have the biggest impact. And I think what's unusual, or should be more usual, is looking at the places where you have in town industrial uses of the past. And if you look in all the cities that I just named, and you have those old industrial parks, that's what's really sparked the investment, from the parks, from the recreation, to the jobs, to the building. And here you've got a gem, Paradise Valley, where General Time was founded in 1954, was one of Athens' first industrial parks. That's why Terrapin ended up there. That's why you see the record press guys up the street there, David Barbie at the back door with his recording studio. So it's strategically located to where really we're just at the tipping point of what this could do for this whole side of town by opening the park and opening the greenway and connecting it to the park already to the north.
1 minute, Michael.
And again, with all the biking that I mentioned before, this just shows when you get people out of the car, it's an economic driver. They're going to spend more money. You're going to have trail tourism. You'll have people, you know, locally buying skates and bikes and running shoes, kayaks, paddling gear, fishing, and then it brings in the people from the surrounding communities as well. And then if you can go to the next slide. Really, again, focusing on the economic impact that this has. When you've got this whole section of town with employers like Evergreen, Power Partners, Georgia Power, Terrapin, giving their employees a chance to get out of their car, to be able to bike to work, to have a park at their back door, to be able to shuttle their kids and families to the park without having to get in a car. So really the bottom line is, as connected trails succeed, they increase business activity, employment, wages, property value, income, and most importantly, tax revenues. And it's really just a self-reinforcing upward spiral. And I think the investment here, while it's a large one, when you look at it as a total sum, it is two projects coming together to really make one big impact in the community. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Michael. And so to be clear, you're with Nodding Development, which is, or Developments, which is behind working with General Time?
Yes, correct, Lauren.
Okay. Jeff, go right ahead.
I have to be, I confess that I'm a little confused because we saw this huge sweeping vision and a lot of maps, a lot of property we looked at. We are talking about extending a trail, we're talking about trails?
Yes, if you go back to if y'all can go back to the second map.
Not talking about the property itself, but just trails around the perimeter or through the property to improve access by other than motor vehicles.
So if you'll go back to the second map.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with one of the Barber Street projects mentioned here. So
okay. So the Barber Street project is independent. The transportation services will be presenting in the next session. I guess they haven't yet. And then the idea is that trail, the Barber Street pedestrian access comes right to where General Time is.
Right.
And it's full inception. Now, if it's not completed and it's full inception, then really what you've done is if you did the section 3 and 4, then there will be a stop. And then we have mandated sidewalks all the way down Newton Bridge Road and all the way down Dairy Pack. So essentially it would be creating more problems than solutions, because you would be telling people, oh, well, you can get on it downtown, but then you have to stop and you're not going to have bike and pedestrian access. But then when you get to general time, you will. So that's one aspect of it. And then here, what I'm asking for, proposing, is this additional acquisition of acreage to the north that would connect the ball fields and expand the greenway.
But
So the trails that we're doing on property are recreational trails that we're doing, and in terms of mountain biking. And then we have mandated sidewalks, multimodal sidewalks running north, south, east, and west on our property per our planned development approval.
so you're talking about taking that property out of an industrial park usage and making it recreational?
We are already fully entitled through our PD process. We're under contract for 5 acres, selling off multifamily for 200 units.
Right. Yeah, I was on the planning commission when all that came through. So
we're fully entitled now.
Yeah, but what I'm looking at here, I see 291 acres. Is that correct? What I'm looking at here?
Yes, that would be the expansion of Sandy Creek Nature Preserve.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Through the acquisition of 5 properties that are all readily available.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood what we were talking about here.
I may have given you a long answer.
So Petrina's next on the list, but can you go ahead and summarize that again? Like, what is your project? The Twitter version.
My real estate project is 35 acres of adaptive reuse on what was the former clock
I mean, what is your submission?
My submission is
this project here for TSPLOST.
My submission is the Barber Street bike path and pedestrian and the expansion of the greenway.
Okay, thanks. I think there's a little bit of overlap happening here. Petrina.
I am really drawn to ideas like the Atlanta Beltline and this idea of connecting businesses in that area. I think that is, sorely needed. What I'm finding is, and it's more maybe a comment as something to think about and for the committee to think about, what I'm finding with something like a Beltline, there's this whole neighborhood, say that I'm from, or Rolling Ridge or something, where people might want to bike, but there's this whole like disconnect. So even before you get to quote the Beltline or our version of the Beltline, our Barber Street line, there's going to be like things that are going to disconnect certain people. It's just something to keep in mind, because I see this happening, that it sounds like it's connecting people to businesses, but there isn't, say on, can't even think of the name of the street, but the street that feeds into Barber Street, which has a lot of not well-off people, and even further back, like here in Jefferson Road, and we just heard a project, all of us are cut off from a location that's pretty close by, and a lot of like places that seem like nice places to work and are within biking distance. So it's just something to keep in mind, that there's all kind of like breaks, sort of barriers or breaks on the path to getting to your path. It's just a comment that it sounds like a connection, but it's not a connection.
I think that highlights why I put these two together, even though one of them is, being presented by the transportation department, is because it's not just pedestrian that makes these areas dynamic and successful. And it's not just greenways that makes these areas boom with economic activity. And it's really the pairing of them both together.
Okay, additional questions? Jeff? No, John. Jeff already spoke. John?
I'm sorry. So the 21.2 million, how much of that is for the Barber Street project and how much
I
for?
think it's roughly half and half, and you'll see more details when ACC Transportation presents fully for that. And like I said, I feel like they've got documentation that has documentation because they've been working on this for years, where I'm a relative newcomer and just kind of supporting their efforts. So you will see very detailed explanation of this in your next presentations.
Okay, and one more quick question. You used the phrase fully entitled. Forgive me, but I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Yeah, so we changed one use from another, and so we have specific regulations where we are in the plan development, we have X number of units for multifamily, we have X number of units of retail, restaurant, an office. We're permitted to build a hotel on the property. So our zoning essentially means our zoning is complete.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions before we go into discussion? Okay, so for some context, what Michael is talking about as far as where we are now with Barber Street is there's $6 million in TSPLOST 2018 from the bike bucket that is probably more than likely being allocated for facilities, at least from Boulevard to basically general time. And something will happen between Boulevard and Prince, and that's taking up the entire bike bucket. So there is nothing left after that. So if the project goes over budget, it's, there's not the money there unless something comes forward with TSPLOST 2023. So I want to read your description, Michael. So what this project is 4 segments of Barber Street to Newton Bridge. That's 5 million. I'm looking at one of your attachments. There's a bridge over the river to create a greenway loop and expansion. That's another 5 million. Then there's a greenway extension, 4 million. And then there's land acquisition, 1 million. And that came out to 15 million. But, by the time this went through staff review, there were additional costs, and now we're at 20 something million. Does that sound right for what the project is in and of itself? Did I get everything? Okay. And so to be clear, Michael, you're just kind of like advocating for these 2 big projects. You're not coming forth with any offer to partially fund them on behalf of General Time or Knox Development, because one of the things you mentioned is the Atlanta Beltline, which part of the reason why it's flourished is those public-private partnerships. And here in Athens, we can take a lot of pride because our trails and our infrastructure is largely funded by our sales taxes. So I was just wondering if you were, looking to offer anything more than that, more than advocating. And we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. We do have every intent to be a trailhead. And if you look at a plat map of our property, we have a dog leg that runs east-west that hits one of these parcels that would be part of the expansion. And yes, we would pave that part of our private property to reach the greenway. But in terms of acquisition, no, we don't have any, we weren't underwritten that way with our investors to acquire additional properties for greenway expansion.
So a dog head is jargon for like an access point?
Dog leg, it's the old railroad spur.
Okay.
So it runs, it's a long, skinny, I think it's 75 feet wide, and it runs all the way across Georgia Power's property. on the backside, all the way across Evergreen's property on the backside, and then hits the railroad. But that's an offshoot of our property.
Okay.
And I also wanted to mention, everybody probably already has knowledge of this, that the railroad was privatized maybe 2 years ago. So, and crossing the railroad, it's a much easier task these days. You're not dealing with the CSX or Norfolk Southern. So in contemplation of expanding the Greenway, I think it's a much easier task.
Good point, because that is a big issue, working with the railroad. All right, additional questions or comments for Michael?
Michael, who are these investors you're speaking of? Just the different businesses in the corridor?
No. So my investors in underwriting this property and development. So when we underwrote it, we had to go to the investors with the prospectus, and we didn't contemplate acquiring additional properties for additional green space. We got 35 acres is enough land for us right now.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you. Y'all
coming
get
out
some
to
rest.
Yeah. All right, crew, if you'll just hang around for a few more minutes, we are going to talk about the alternate projects process. Keith, do you want to kick it off?
Sure, thank you. I since we had a presentation that got canceled somewhat late, I did want to take since we had a few extra minutes, even though I know it's late, and just start thinking about the alternates and what you want to do for those. We are just a little bit under halfway through the presentations, and you've asked a lot of questions each time about what's what could be done for less. And so there's two schools of thought that have taken place before on alternates in the committees. Some committees have chosen to take a vote on the projects of which ones you wanted to ask for alternates on, and just those projects that met the certain number of votes that was requested were asked to submit an alternate. And then other committees, I think the last two committees have asked for all projects to submit an alternate. So those are the two. Then maybe there's some third method, but those are the two that I've experienced on the committees in the past, and really thought I'd open it up for just discussion on what you thought you might want. Ultimately, I guess we can take a vote on whether you want every project to submit an alternate or some other method.
We have some questions up, but I want to go ahead and ask. Usually when we have asked for alternates in the past, it was a project at a reduced amount. Is there another option? Like we've had a couple of groups, and I'm not saying that this is the way we need to go or we need to tell people to do this or whatever, but is there an alternate route where we ask groups to combine projects or pick their favorites and put it in a package? Does that qualify as an alternate?
I don't know that we've ever asked, a lot of these projects are coming from the public, and so for them to combine, they've got to go to maybe perhaps a complete stranger and join up. And the few projects we've asked in the past, neither group wanted to give up the chance that theirs was the one that got selected. Not saying you can't do it. Just we haven't tried it very often, but the few times we have, it's not been successful, and we haven't tried it on this program, on this project, this TSPLOST program yet. So, you do have some people that have submitted a lot of different projects that they could combine, or they could give priorities. I think you've asked, like for Transportation Public Works, for them to give their priorities. That is certainly a fair question to all the presenters. If you've presented a $10 million project, and that's basically what you're doing with an alternate, is you're saying you've submitted a project, but if you can only get a piece of it, what piece is it you want the most? or what portion. And that's really what the alternate process does. As part of that, you could ask them to give you a ranking.
But that would be within the project, the individual project itself, and not
Yeah,
across multiple projects.
right. And typically in the past, the committee either decides on the project or the alternate, not among the committee do you go back and say, okay, well, we like this project, but we only want to do this piece of it if it wasn't offered as an alternate, because it's usually, the person doing the submitting gets to choose what portions of the projects they want y'all to vote on. So.
Okay, yeah. John, did you have your hand up first? Okay, so then Jeff, then Teresa.
Did you say me, Jeff?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have a couple of thoughts that I've been considering all along, and especially tonight, we've seen a lot of very expensive projects that, to me, could be easily broken down into right-of-way acquisition and design, and put the construction in a later SPLOST, which allows us to get more done while real estate is available, but it does obligate some future SPLOST to actually carrying out the project. So there's pluses and minuses to that. If you ask every project for an alternate, it seems to me that it gives them more time to put some thought into it. They get a little more time to consider exactly what it is, or consider all alternates and come up with the best one. If you wait to vote at the end after you've heard everything, you shorten that amount of time, but you only ask for consideration from the people whose projects have a more universal support. And I'm kind of leaning towards asking everybody. It seems like a simple matter, and it's not my time I'm wasting, but to go ahead and give them, I would rather hear a more considered alternate from the ones we do want to consider alternates for, as compared to something that you had to rush through that you might only have a week to figure out what you come up with an alternate for. And that's my thoughts. And I have a question, I guess, for Keith. In between, in the SPLOST, the last SPLOST I did, in between defining the projects and reading the legislation on which the citizens voted, all these very specific things got reduced to more general descriptions, because you don't want to obligate yourself to do something that turns out not to be doable. And is that the case for a TSPLOST, where it might be a little more broad or a little more generic than we're going to do projects 18, 22, 17, and 59?
To answer that, yes, it is. When we get to the finish line, when y'all selected projects, and Mayor Commission has, we've gone through this, we will come up and try to take the scope and make sure that if you have a specific project, and I'm trying to think if I can come up with one, 5 points, the 5 points intersection, let's just say, because that's one that's tonight was very specific for that intersection. If that's one of the projects that's selected by the committee and Mayor and Commission, and before it gets on the referendum, we will take the description and try to write it in a broad term, so that we're just not locked into a box of something we can't build. But we don't write it so broad that it moves money from the 5 points intersection improvements to some other part of town. We still leave it written specific. We have some projects that are very broad, like in the current TSPLOST Prince Avenue corridor improvements. Well, that could be for any improvements along Prince Avenue, any corridor, any part of it. Atlanta Highway and Lexington are the same way, but they were submitted as projects for those roads, corridor improvements for those roads. So we keep it specific to where the intent was, but to try to write it broad enough that we wouldn't want to write the 5 points and say, as part of this project, we're going to install 200 feet of crosswalk and 4 monopole traffic signals and such, that then we're locked in to something and we can't change that to what's more, what's a better design or what's the better approach when we get into that design phase. So it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that caught me a little bit by surprise when I did that SPLOST was, hey, that's not really what we said, but I understood once I understood why it had to be done that way, and I guess I wanted to mention that.
Yes. Okay. So I do want to make sure that everyone else gets their questions answered, and we have a couple people on stack. So next is Teresa, then Jennifer, then Travis.
Thanks, Keith.
You're muted,
Teresa, we cannot hear you.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. My bad. This is my very first TSPLOST experience, so I have a lot to learn, but I feel like asking everybody who submitted to send us a scaled down version of their project is, I don't know, I don't feel right about that. I feel like we ought to be able to whittle down the number of projects we want to see about working on before we ask for reduced proposals. We got things that are as big as, putting in fiber optic cable so that traffic engineering and transportation and public works can monitor how things are moving in the county in real time, to sidewalk projects inside of, cul-de-sac neighborhoods. And I'm not passing judgment on whether the smaller projects have merit or not, but I feel like our responsibility is to recommend spending the TSPLOST funds in the best way that benefits the most people in the community, and that means the whole of Athens-Clarke County. So that's just my thought on the matter. I've been keeping a spreadsheet, kind of looking at all these different projects, and I don't know how we're going to whittle it down. I really don't. But anyway, I just think we should not be asking everyone to give us an alternative.
Thank you, Teresa. Jennifer?
I tend to agree with what's been said before about not asking everybody to give an alternative. I do have one thing that does concern me, though, is some of these projects we've talked about have been very linear in nature, and they've attached to other projects. And is there some way that we can, and I know this would be just a huge amount of work, well, for me, because I'm not very good at this stuff, but it might be very easy for somebody else, to map these projects so we don't, if we don't approve one, we're actually not making matters exponentially worse. Because I feel like some of these are really linked together, and if we do one, we probably need to do these other two because we get a greater impact by doing the 3 together than we would, anyone on their own. But in the decision-making process, it'd be good to know what it looks like from that 30,000-foot view. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a lot to keep up with the overlap. Keith, you got a wonderful survey tool you're pulling up?
Trying to get it zoomed in onto the right.
All right, while you're doing that, let's go ahead and hear from Travis because he hasn't spoken yet tonight. Travis?
In the question that we're discussing now, I think thinking about whether or not to ask people submit some dwindled down or reduced proposal, I'm against it. For a lot of reasons, but primarily, right, democracy is about deliberation, not consensus. It's about the management of scarcity. And the people asked to deliberate in this instance is this committee. And shifting that responsibility to the people requesting funds for particular projects goes against some real fundamental basic tenets of democracy, particularly in this sort of form. Whether it's procedurally correct or not is irrelevant, really. Just because you can do something doesn't mean it is within the spirit of this sort of task, right? And so these sessions really are to vet these people and their proposals, not to, necessarily, try to get them to all agree so everybody can get something. The worthy projects that meet the criteria that the individual members vote on should get funded, right? That's the deliberation part. Plus, asking them to go back and make changes and alterations could very well do the opposite of the equity work everyone seems to talk about a lot, right? The equitable access to professional services and being able to go back and pursue people to assist people in these projects and coming up with a different draft will likely and definitely could exacerbate some of those inequalities that we see expressed in various census tracts throughout Clarke County. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, Travis, I want to make sure that I understand your point. So you're concerned that if we go back to the presenters, even if we say to all of them, like, hey, could you submit an alternate, that it might have a chilling effect on what they want to do in their vision and their hope?
That's not what I'm saying, but I don't know if it would have a chilling effect, right? But it would take their dreams from what may be now their vision for these projects they're asking for, from what for some of us may feel like even maybe grandiose or bloated, to reduced and reductionist, right? And that's not what they sought after. That's not why they're pursuing this TSPLOST. That may be appropriate, right, for them to come back for this funding later or after some deliberation. But at this point, it's a little, I would say, premature and undermines the real heart of the democratic task we've been asked to participate in.
So what you're saying is if we were to go back now, it's too soon, that we should deliberate on the projects and see what comes forward, that if we were to ask folks for an alternate, it might not be authentic to what they wanted to begin with. It wouldn't be their project anymore. Is that what you're saying?
That's not my main point, but that's I think that's a fair offshoot, right? And I think that instead of us shifting the tough deliberative work to them, let's keep it with the committee, and we commit to doing the tough deliberative work. And that may mean, we sadly have to turn down certain projects, or it's a lot tougher to decide, or our questions are more pointed or less pointed, or confused or ill-framed, right? But that's what we've been tasked with.
Yeah, Travis, if I could just, I'm not trying to talk you out of your point. I just want to make sure. I don't know if you had been appointed to the committee yet. Were you on when we had the discussion about how we vote?
I read the stuff that was shared with me, but I wasn't on the committee now.
Okay, so and it may not change your viewpoint. I'm not trying to change your viewpoint. Just so there is still deliberation to go on if you did want to ask for alternate versions, they're not required to submit one, for one. It's just that if they thought they had a smaller version of the project that would still work, they could submit that. But when it comes time to vote and deliberate, you would still be deliberating not just on the original project, but the original project or an alternate. So you have both projects there. It's not that they have to take away their original submission to submit an alternate. You would be choosing from both then.
And that was my understanding.
Okay, all right.
It's not that I think that our responsibilities are going to be minimized procedurally, what you're describing as procedure. I'm talking about the spirit of our active participation in the demos.
Okay, very good. I just want to make sure.
Katrina? I thought she had her hand up.
Yeah, well, it's a little hard to follow that, but um, I'm trying to. Well, I'm just thinking about the whole process, because everyone did come to this as an individual, and maybe they do have a community spirit or civic spirit that if they knew that other people were working on similar projects, they wouldn't mind compromising. But just kind of having a broader view of seeing all the different presentations. The reason that I ask for an alternate version is in the context of some of the other ones that we've seen. So if it's making a process point, but not everyone has maybe the same sort of overview that we have, but their spirit might be to compromise.
Yeah, Madeline, did you have a comment?
Well, to build on what you've said, Travis, and what you've said, Patrina, I find myself, I participated in a national issues forum that the Kettering Foundation promotes today on deliberation versus debate this morning. And so it's been a full day of that. As someone who's done this process now twice, or this is my second time, we all have our special interests. And one of the things we're asked to do when we make our presentation is worst case scenario. So, we're seeing a person's leadership passion converted into, the most costly contingency bottom line ever. And I'm finding myself wanting to learn wishing that everybody could hear everybody, because then we would all find that ultimate consensus. But I'm finding myself wanting to cluster these projects and look at I found myself, the gentleman who presented on the traffic light, a smart technology, thinking, gosh, we could put that in the 5 Points area, and want to cross-pollinate some of the requests with requests. But the bottom line here is, and my apologies for droning on, because we have so many institutions in place. I was 20 years on the Greenway Commission, and very familiar with Athens in Motion coming into play. And obviously, the extraordinary staff that's Athens-Clarke, thinking, gosh, I'd love to be able to take a summary of what we as are finding common driven dreams, and ask those existing entities that study that, with their spare time, to help us rank. And that may be just a pipe dream, but about procedure, I would love to be able to tap into the Greenway Network planners right now, the Athens in Motion advocates right now, the Firefly folks right now, and give them the projects that have presented to us in a summary way, and ask them for their best recommendations. I'll be quiet now.
Thank you, Madeline. Teresa.
Hi, Madeline. Athens in Motion is going to be submitting several projects to the TSPLOST. And, you know, I'm on the Athens in Motion Commission. And so naturally, I think they're all great projects and should be funded 100%. But there are a couple of projects in the Athens in Motion submissions that could absorb some of the smaller projects that we have heard from and will be hearing from. And, you know, I don't know, you know, what the procedure would be to say, hey, I fund you through TSPLOST, but if this Athens in Motion project to build sidewalks within neighborhoods gets fully funded, then perhaps you could be at the top of the list for that. You know, and I don't know if that's something that we could do, or, you know, if there's some process that would have to be gone through to do that. But anyway, so we have a ton of projects and we have not a ton of money, you know, even though it sounds like a lot of money. And, you know, I don't know, I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around it. So I know what you're saying.
Yeah, so, and this has come up before, a challenge really, and we'll hear about some of these other projects later, is to what extent do we fund buckets where we give folks a hope who maybe aren't going to get their project funded, or maybe couldn't even submit a project. Like, we create that space for them. And at what point do we, you know, try and get these very specific needs from our community and from staff to be able to do their jobs, to serve Athens? Like, you know, where do we find that balance? And then of course the mayor and commission will designate a lot of projects, and then we have even less money to work with. So, Keith, do you want clarity on the discussion around the alternates? What
Well,
we've,
ultimately, we need to bring it to a vote. We didn't put it on the agenda as being an item we were going to vote on tonight, so I don't really feel comfortable bringing something out of the blue to vote when some people had to drop off early. But ultimately, I guess as a group, yeah, we would need to, y'all would need to decide and vote on what you want to do for those alternates, how you want to treat them, if you want to treat them at all, even if you want to ask for them at all. That's really what I was looking for, was just to get the discussion going so y'all can start thinking about that. Because if we are going to do it, the time to do it will be coming soon. Whether, you know, October 6th is only a few weeks away for when we end presentations. I did want to quickly show, I put it up, but I took it back down since I didn't want to be blocking the conversation that, and I don't know if you can see it on this small screen. You do have a zoom button on the left side of your presentation. If you didn't know that, it's over there. But this is a version of we're almost done with it, the map that shows all of the projects. And I can't zoom in on my screen anymore without making it go off the side of the page. But it has tabs for the bike ped projects and the transit projects and the roads and bridges and projects. And it has little dots for where every one of the projects are, and that you can click on the dot and go to the project, and then all the projects will be listed over on the left, and that'll take you to the project pages that we've looked at before. So we do have a map of all of these. That's we're on the final stages of finishing. And then the last tab that's on that is the survey for the different projects. And I think they had a couple of tweaks on some language changes for that, and then we'll be ready to post this on the website so people can start seeing the maps and the survey tool.
that's great, Keith. I'm really excited about this tool. How have y'all handled projects with multiple locations? Like, some have multiple intersections or streets, or they're, you know, linear.
If we could clearly define where they are, projects, they have multiple dots. If, for instance, if there's a project that occurs at 4 or 5 different parks, well, each of those parks has a dot on it. So the dots are first, and GIO in the interim is going back and trying to put in line segments on the roads for those projects that are linear, but that takes a lot longer. And just in the time from presentations and getting the information and trying to get the survey tool up, they haven't been able to get all of those done. That's some of the things that they can keep adding to as the map is up. So
what a great tool. Thank you guys so much for working on that. It's going to be really helpful to our voters. We only have a few minutes left. I want to move Dawn to the top of the stack because we haven't heard from her tonight.
Hi, yeah, that is a great tool, Keith, and I look forward to really looking at that. For me, I guess it seems like the elephant in the room is that we have to know what the commission's going to say, right? Well, I forget what the terminology is. They earmark them or they, whatever, they say these have to be in the TSPLOST funding, right?
right.
Is that, am I understanding that right?
That's correct.
When will we know that?
They, it's my understanding, well, they discussed, we had a work session on it this past Tuesday. And so if you want to go back and listen to that, there's some good discussion that they had about projects they like or don't like, or they're talking about. I believe they plan to discuss it again tomorrow night at the agenda setting meeting as an item. And then hopefully if they're, our request to them, if they were going to do that, was that they do that at the October 5th voting session before you guys start hear your last presentations and you start deliberation and voting, then you would know how much money was available or that they had already pre-designated. So, and we call it designated projects.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess it's hard for me to consider without fully understanding the full envelope and then what has already been put aside. So,
right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And the SPLOST office has been advocating for us to get that list. So thank you, Keith, and to your crew. Teresa, Jennifer.
Yeah, let me just answer Jennifer's question real quick. On the map tool, it is not, as far as I know, possible to turn on other layers. There are those other maps that we've sent you that have some of those sidewalks and things on it. You just have to look at the two side by side.
Right, I've seen those. I just thought it would be great to have them all in one place. Thank you, though.
I'll ask that question, but I don't know if that's something that they can do.
Okay.
And along those lines, Alan was wondering if previous projects could be added. I think that's probably going to be a bit much for the SPLOST staff, but there's not a way to add a layer or anything like that.
I don't know that I'm gonna be able to get them to do that in a timely fashion. They're pretty swamped too, so.
Yeah, these are great ideas,
I will ask them and see.
Thanks for at least asking about these things, y'all.
Sure.
Teresa, you had your hand back up?
Yeah, just real quickly, I think there are some of these projects that we've seen where we already know kind of what the minimum is. I mean, like for example, with the Mitchell Bridge Timothy intersection across Atlanta Highway. I mean, the minimum we need to do is to acquire the land. Okay, so I mean, and there are some other projects like the Firefly Trail that we heard from. Like the minimum is to finish pouring the concrete on that segment of the pathway. So we don't know what that translates to in terms of dollars, but they can get back to us on that. So I think there are a lot of projects like that where we can kind of, figure that out, and that reduces the amount of work that we have to do. I mean, there are some that we're going to have to go back to, but I mean, there are a lot of them that we could just put in a lower category, lower priority list for the time being. We should identify the ones that seem like the highest priority, the ones that are going to do the greatest good for, the greatest number of people in the county, and then, see what it looks like in terms of, getting some alternatives from them and work that way, work from there back down.
Absolutely.
Right, two more questions, and I think that's all we'll have time for tonight, but we can certainly feel free to shoot out emails to the group or to Keith, myself, Robert. So Jennifer, then Jeff.
And I should know, I'm sure I should know the answer to this question, but I don't. So people are asking for money to fund projects. Is there a time frame in which they need to spend that money? Like, I've been surprised that people have TSPLOST money from 2018 that they haven't spent yet. I mean, I realize there was a pandemic going on, but does that, you know, like to Teresa's point, where on Mitchell Bridge Road, we know we have to acquire land first. Well, that's going to push design off and construction off. And so should they even be asking for all that money now?
Well, okay, so part of it is like there's a lot of projects that are still under construction, and we can't just execute all projects at once. Some of them have bonds associated with them, so we have been able to take out money before we had the money. And of course, this TSPLOST is collecting so much money that we're having to have these meetings now way ahead of schedule, to be fair. I don't think that there's a time frame in which we need to spend the dollars. There's still SPLOST 2011 projects happening, and these are great projects like our park improvements, Ben Burton's bathrooms, Dudley Park. You know, it's just, you know, that is something to keep in mind. Even if we had the money to do all these projects, we just would not be able to get them done in 5 years or before the next TSPLOST for sure, for what it's worth there. Does that provide some clarity?
There's not a defined time frame. I mean, it's not like at the end of when we finish collecting money that you either spend it, lose it, use it or lose it type thing. It's once it's been put as part of the SPLOST and the revenues collected, it's there until it's spent on that project or moved. That project's finished and whatever's left is moved to another project.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I will add this, while it can be tempting to start projects now, and I think that's certainly a strategy that we can take in order to continue, I guess, the success of the SPLOST program and TSPLOST, we will want to have things to show our voters that are done.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, that's helpful. Like, you know, the murmur trestle, like it won't be done by the time we take by the time this referendum comes up, but it's almost done. And there's, you know, the Whitehall roundabout, and there's of course we've had a lot of pavement maintenance recently, so we should try and keep that in mind too. It can be tempting to start all these projects, but we've got to have some we can finish. Yeah. Jeff, and then we'll call tonight.
Yeah, I think this is something you probably just alluded to, but one thing I keep in my mind is that at the end of our deliberations, we are recommending a list of projects that we have to convince the citizens of Athens that it's worth paying an extra tax for. So
it's not extra.
Well,
it's a continuation.
It's the same.
Yeah, it's a penny that they could vote to say no to, but we want them to say yes.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so when we consider all this, that's just one more piece of the puzzle, is that, you know, among all the other things, it has to be something that people want to say yes to. So and I guess that, I don't know if that means broad appeal or what, but
yeah.
That's all.
Jeff, you're right. There's a strategy behind that, right? There's a strategy there. Okay, so Keith, I guess we'll put the alternates on the agenda for further discussion, a motion for Wednesday.
I prefer if we do it on if we not on Wednesday. I've got to be out again on Wednesday. So
okay, well that's great. That gives us more time to think about it.
Yeah, y'all have some more time to talk Wednesday if you want to, and then maybe the following week if possible.
Great, that works for me. Okay, guys, I know it's 9:30. Thank you for hanging in there, and we'll see you all back Wednesday for more TSPLOST 2023 project presentation.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a good night.
Have a good
Y'all
Tuesday.
have a good night. Bye-bye.
Good job.
Bye.
Bye.
Be safe.